DC Tyrant. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201 begins. In the morning, the sun once again spread on the glass, casting a colorful color spectrum. Badi slowly opened his eyes. His bright eyes looked up at the sky, refracting a multicolor spectrum, dazzling the slight dust moving in front of his eyes. His body came out of a slight rest. The cells started to fully operate, fully absorbing the sunlight, and a strong sense of power burst out from every inch of the cells and muscles in his body. The cells began to absorb the sunlight in large quantities, making him comfortable and warm like eating. And Pamela Lillian Astley also felt comfortable because of the sunlight. Last night, the poison ivy was sent to him. Pamela knew clearly that she had become an alien, like flowers and plants, able to absorb sunlight, and her skin was green all over her body. The kind of monster that was regarded as a freak by humans and made people afraid. This brought great fear to her nerves of killing for the first time, and then she was captured by the Assassin's League like a cargo. Finally, she tried her best to spawn countless plants with fear, escaped, was caught by a raven, cast a magic spell that could make her sleepy and calm her mind, and sent her to Badi. Seeing Badi was undoubtedly a delight for her, but also fear, panic, and at a loss. She had become a monster. Of course, she didn't know that Badi wanted her to become such a monster. The moment he saw her, he comforted her warmly and comfortably, without showing a trace of disgust, and fear. This made Pamela burst into tears of joy. When she was most confused, fearful, scared, and panicked, Badi, whom she loved, did not dislike her. Pamela heard Badi's footsteps moving away. Her trembling eyelashes opened. Her hands unconsciously pulled the edge of the quilt, carefully, without making the slightest sound. Her eyes with deep affection, watching Badi's gradually receding back. Finally, her eyes were moist, and with a smile on her green lips, she closed her eyes again, and fell asleep peacefully. Someone accepted me as a monster. So good. In the morning, after taking a shower, Bart arranged Hera to prepare breakfast for Pamela, and take care of her. By the way, he also had a sense of surveillance. Bart didn't want to be too moved by Poison Ivy after conquering her, and then think that he was too good to her, and that she was not worthy of him, after she turned into a monster, and then left him. He had to control everything. After arranging all this, he connected to Raven's telepathy, and learned that Raven was tracking Siberia. He told her to be careful, and then Bart went straight to the 10th floor, to complete the future blueprint he needed. Now he has enough power to conquer the world, but he just needs his own people to manage it. Therefore, in the next few days, nearly 10 years, he needs to be crazy to create archons and soldiers, to make the earth his perfect back garden. But half an hour later, little Luther knocked on the door of Badi's office, and asked Badi for the trademark of the future company. The current logo of Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited is still the logo of the acquired company, and it is used casually when it is about to gather all resources to organize Badi's giant empire. It needs a centralized and purposeful logo. Little Luther did not dare to make a decision on this matter casually, because this might be the flag logo of a country in the future, representing the logo of the Earth. How dare he mess around and ask Badi directly? Boss. He walked in and looked at Badi with a flash of eagerness. The godlike figure before still lingered in his mind, and his heart was warm. Badi nodded and thought for a while. It seems that he really has not thought about what logo to represent himself. Unlike the 12 families of Krypton, they have obvious logos. The S on the chest of the L family represents hope. When it is mentioned, Superman will be thought of. This is an impression deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, and it will come to mind without thinking. The room was silent. With the morning sun shining in, the light shines on the tiny floating dust particles, floating in the air. There seems to be a flash of light when Badi's eyes open and close. The thought that in the future, the symbol representing himself will be inserted on the top of the Earth, on the moon, on the sun, and on countless planets in the universe, declaring that the entire universe, everything, is his property, makes Badi's heart rise with unparalleled enthusiasm and arrogance. Bati's sharp and tough face can't help but outline a smile overlooking the world. He picked up a pen and drew on the paper. The smile outlined was very big, with an unyielding arrogance. He drew in on the paper. Straight away, he picked up the paper, and under the strong light, a huge was reflected on the ground. All this is for Bamulodi. Chapter 202. 10 years later, 1982, Raven tracked the Assassins League, passing through Siberia, the Altai Mountains, the Shianshan Mountains, the Loess Plateau, through the east of Asia, and then around Myanmar, the Philippines, Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Cambodia, Myanmar, Niger, Nigeria, Thailand, Malaysia, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives. More than 100 countries. There are Assassins League bases. The organization is so tight and huge that it is hard to imagine. She almost traveled half the world, and finally in the Arabian Peninsula, she sensed a faint breath of the Three Palaces, found the headquarters of the Assassins League, and saw the Lazarus Pool, a magic pool with the breath of the Three Palaces, which can prolong the life of ordinary people and heal injuries. This made Raven relieved and sealed the Lazarus Pool. But in the end, the wily Lars Al Ghul, the leader of the Assassins League, escaped. Then, Badi took action personally and searched for his traces. Batman's father-in-law, who had been entangled with Batman for a long time, was killed by Badi with one hand, and his death was without any ripples. Then, Badi took over the Assassins League. The huge empire, along with the wealth accumulated by the Assassins League for hundreds of years, rose instantly in this year. In 1983, starting from this year, the Universe Group was renamed Bamulodi, directly named after Badi, with the logo, all walks of life, finance, trade, computer networks. He created the world's first home computer, popularized electronic information throughout the world, directly replaced Bill Gates, released the world's most widely used computer system, and released the world's first portable mobile phone, eliminating the old era of big brothers. Metallurgy, petroleum energy, metallurgy, plastic raw materials and products, real estate construction, electronics, household appliances, trade and shipping, medical treatment, food, catering, microelectronics and information product manufacturing, aerospace industry, atomic energy industry, modern pharmaceutical industry, new materials industry, heavy machinery industry, electric power industry, etc. All basic industries and heavy processing industries have his infiltration. In this year, he directly set off the era of the entire Earth with his own strength. The leap forward in science and technology is simply shocking. Every day, almost all parts of the world have different degrees of leap forward progress. This progress is terrifying. It seems that every country has a great man, a super scientist, an agriculturalist, an industrialist, and a financier who lead them to closely follow the progress of the world. The whole world is evolving with Badi's footsteps. The whole world inexplicably began to leap, and countless people followed this leap in confusion, and under Badi's guidance, they burst into enthusiasm for development. In 1984, scientific satellites, technical test satellites and application satellites that marked were launched into the sky. Almost every day, one or even two satellites flew into the sky under Badi's instructions. Even the craziest thing was, sometimes, one day, Badi carried two satellites in his left and right hands, rushed into the Earth's orbit, put them down, and then flew up again and installed them. In one day, he directly brought 20 satellites to the Earth's near orbit. If his employees were not too tired and could not keep up with the progress of satellite manufacturing, Badi could directly put hundreds of satellites in one day. This directly led to the fact that by 1990, he had more than 1,780 satellites on the Earth, more than half of the satellites on the Earth, monitoring the Earth at any time, and providing him with a global network. This year, Luther made an indelible contribution, and was given by Badi. When Badi asked him what he needed, "I need wisdom comparable to yours." Hearing this, Badi immediately adjusted his brain synapses, making his brain have almost the same computing level as ordinary computers, surpassing ordinary people. At the same time, due to overusing his brain, he began to lose his hair. In 1985, with Badi's invasion of the Soviet Union, and some people realizing that Badi was actually inhuman, he was in panic and speculation, and was defeated in the Cold War with the United States. Under Badi's intervention, the Soviet Union collapsed early, and Badi's tyrannical control of 5 countries, as well as the war-torn empire that was rising in Africa and the Middle East, where there was oil coveted by the United States, was also under Badi's direct control. Nearly 15 countries were directly controlled by Badi, and as for the in-depth indirect control of capital, it had spread to many countries, catching all countries off guard. Everything was completely everywhere. With a forward-looking vision, Badi was completely controlling the progress of the Earth by himself. All the processes related to the next few years of the Earth's people were advanced by him, and he was actively and forcibly advancing. Luther continued to lose his hair. In 1986, many heroes and villains collected by Badi gradually grew up for him to use. However, nowadays, as Badi uses the life origin chamber to create a series of gene-generated creatures such as Kryptonian warriors, biochemical warriors, and archons, these heroes or villains collected locally seem to be somewhat powerless. When Badi faces this world, this single combat power is so weak that it can only handle some minor things and make various arrangements to become his horse vanguard. Luther becomes the Mediterranean. In 1987, Badi directly used capital to control a country and became the president of a country. This was nothing, but when Badi directly transformed this country into a monarchy, almost 23 million ordinary people became his civilians, which almost caused a global earthquake. The United Nations almost condemned it, causing the earth to shake, and almost sent troops to trigger the Third World War. But in the end, under Badi's intervention, the authorization of the UN Security Council was not passed, and Badi still became the king of a country. Because the UN Charter has a premise about the inviolability of a country's sovereignty. A country's sovereignty must serve to protect the human rights of its people. When sovereignty becomes a tool for rulers to destroy and trample on human rights, the protection of the UN Charter is no longer effective. There is no doubt that Badi spent a huge amount of money to build his country directly, brought them out of the abyss of war, and became their hope. With a little adjustment, they can directly make them worship and support themselves. Although this war was actually controlled by Badi behind the scenes, it directly caused the 2 regimes in this country to kill nearly 300,000 civilians. The whole country was in a state of panic and the system collapsed. The United States and other people also wanted to swallow them greedily, but in the end, Badi became the king. This made the major powers suddenly vigilant, and they found that everything they used in all their countries, high-end instruments, technology, aerospace technology, and even small household pots, bowls, chairs, and dining tables, were not more or less permeated with Badi's logo, or had common interests in cooperation with Badi. Suddenly, those with wisdom and talent understood that Badi had laid out this huge structure all the way around the world. Using one country to test the reaction of the whole world is a big move that makes people sweat. In fact, Badi even tested the depth of the water of the entire earth. The US government was shocked to discover Badi's power, and suddenly it touched the international level 1988. This year, because Badi was stationed here, the metropolis was declared a special zone by the US government 1989. This year, Batman flew in the Dark Knight of Gotham. By the way, Wayne Enterprises was destroyed by Badi, and this year, Batman appeared for only 3 months before he was hunted down by Badi and disappeared 1990. Heroes of the whole world began to appear gradually 1991. This is the era of gradual magic. Until then, Badi has produced more than 7 million Kryptonian gene warriors all over the world 1992. This is the era of prosperity in the world. This year, the 2 ancient countries of Atlantis and Amazon finally appeared and announced their joining the United Nations. The deep water of the earth also began to splash out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203, United Nations Meeting, Amazon, Atlantis Announcement, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Rio Center. The incandescent lights above illuminated the venue. People kept coming and going in the venue. People of different colors and races came here one after another. The receptionist led them to their own country. Thank you. Mike smiled, and his strong body politely thanked the receptionist. Then he straightened his waist and sat down slowly. You're welcome. The receptionist in red etiquette clothes smiled and then told him that he could call him if he needed anything, and then politely left the vicinity. After 10 years, he has not changed much. His face is not old, but his rough face has been deliberately trimmed. He is not angry, but he is powerful, which gives others the power of a superior. His strong body is even stronger, and his chest is high in the suit he wears. As the national representative of the Tegus country, he came to attend the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development organized by the United Nations in the Rio Center in Brazil. Representatives from more than 180 countries and regions, representatives from more than 60 international organizations, and more than 100 heads of state or government will speak at the conference, urging governments and the public to take positive measures, to coordinate and cooperate to prevent environmental pollution and ecological deterioration, and to work together to protect the living environment of mankind. His fingertips lightly tapped the brown solemn table in front of him. The table had beautiful wood grain and reflected soft light. There was a bottle of natural mineral water with the logo in the upper left corner. Mike's eyes swept over it slightly, and he couldn't help but feel emotional. The huge changes that Badi brought to him were really earth-shaking changes. His hometown became his territory, and he became the representative of his hometown country. The country became better and better, stable, and peaceful. No organization dared to provoke the tiger's den. 10 years ago, he was just a wandering mercenary, but now, as a national representative, he even has a certain say in his own country. This is really amazing. Knock, 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 knock. He tapped the table gently, his eyes leaving the mineral water brand, smiled softly, and swept the venue politely. Whenever representatives from other countries met his gaze, he would nod and smile first, showing the etiquette of Tegus, even though Tegus was only a country that was renamed and born a few years ago. Here, he saw several other countries that had only settled the war in recent years. Teng Chiefdom, Rado Junt, United States of the Union, and Junt. These were all the countries he knew that Badi directly controlled. There were even rumors that the boss controlled more than 7 other countries, but Mike didn't know about these. Even though he was the first person to follow Badi, he had no way to figure out everything about Badi. Now these countries are as beautiful as his hometown. Mike smiled, and he smiled knowingly at the representatives of these countries, or the presidents and leaders one by one. They also smiled knowingly, and nodded to Mike. These countries are well known to the world, and controlled by Badi. His capital control is openly controlling the country. There is even a country named after him, a country that made him the emperor. Badi is like a borer or cancer cell on the earth, eroding the earth and all countries. The world is always shocked by his influence, his ability, his assets, and his technology. The United States is even more afraid of him. It directly designated the metropolis as a special zone, severely governed it, and created a special Sky Eye Club to monitor him, meaning that he cannot escape the American Sky Eye. Then, Mike's eyes were a little hot and excited. He looked at the front row, a man wearing a brown windbreaker with a dark gold logo on the back. He was strong, not as exaggerated as Mike, but stronger than the average person. He had no hair on his head, shining under the light. That was the representative of the Bamuluodi Business Group, Luther, representing the American Bamuluodi Business Group, the largest group in the world, to participate in and promote this World Environmental Protection Conference. As for the Bamuluodi country, because of the influence of the previous monarchy, more than 100 countries in the United Nations denounced it as a hegemonic autocracy and boycotted it. But this kind of boycott is just a joke. In this world, the logo has spread to every corner, encroaching every corner. Every country has things with the logo. It is impossible to resist it in every aspect. Luther seemed to feel that someone was looking at him. He turned his head to look at Mike, ignored him with a stern face, and sat up straight again. Luther, this kid. Mike muttered in dissatisfaction in his heart. Luther grew up under his care, so why doesn't he know how to respect the elderly and love the young? His fiery eyes were not looking at Luther, but at the gold-plated logo on the back. Mike is now a representative of the Tegus country, and he can't wear the clothes that represent the glorious logo of the Vmilo Empire. This makes him itchy in his heart. Damn it, I will beat this kid sooner or later. Mike could only look calm in the end, staring at Luther fiercely in his heart. The beating gradually began with the arrival of representatives from various countries, and the Brazilian representative began to speak. Here I have to explain an illusion. Why is it that the Brazilian representative speaks first at the United Nations meeting? This arrangement was due to an episode when the General Assembly was established. Since no head of state was willing to speak first at that time, the countries agreed that whoever spoke first would have the qualification to speak first at the General Assembly in the future. The Brazilian president volunteered at that time, so for the next 70 years, the Brazilian head of state has always been the first to speak at every General Assembly meeting. The United Nations meeting was in progress, and outside, the streets had been cleared and the Brazilian army soldiers were patrolling and on alert. However, in front of the elite soldiers, there were two people who passed by them openly, walked on the cleared streets under martial law, and walked towards the center of Rio. They acted as if no one was around, and no one could see them. Such a weak land creature, is it worth our coexistence? The speaker was a man with gloomy eyes, gloomy facial features, and a somewhat cruel temperament. He sneered slightly, raised his head, and breathed down with thin rows of gills from his cheeks to his neck, holding a magic pentacle, and casting an invisible spell. He was tall, but he seemed to have an unusually smooth sense, making people feel that he was like a fish, especially when he was wearing a dark fish scale-tied suit and a wide black cape behind him, which gave him a dark fish feeling in the deep sea. It is the duty of Amazon to protect humans. The voice was firm and cold, with the unique coldness of an Amazon warrior. Antiope wore a dark green cape, a strong figure, and a feminine beauty with muscular lines. She wore Amazon armor, silver bracelets, and iron boots. Her skin was slightly dark, and she looked unusually dynamic and powerful. She glanced coldly at the Atlantis representative beside her, the brother of the King of the Seven Seas, the Lord of the Sea, Then, she did not speak or discuss it. Antiope was the Queen of Amazon and the sister of Hippolyta. Both of them appeared in front of the public as representatives of their respective long-hidden countries. Was amused. A trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes, and he did not speak again. The two walked on the cleared streets. The soldiers on guard did not notice anything because of Om's magic. They went straight into the center of Rio and walked to the United Nations conference, where they lost their invisibility. Took a step forward in front of the podium and looked around coldly at the shocked representatives of various countries. All nations, please listen to me. Everyone was calm. It was not the end. It was part of my plan. Chapter 204 Bamilodi. The legendary underwater kingdom, Atlantis emerges. A female fighting nation. Amazon appears to new kingdoms are announced to be born. Amazon and Atlantis invite humans to witness their birth. The whole world, television, magazines, radio broadcasts, everywhere is full of news about the birth of the two mysterious kingdoms. Some people are not afraid to speculate with the worst malice, which may face the impact of the magical kingdom, and will set off huge waves in the international community, which will affect the distribution of world resources. With the consumption of land resources in the future resource world will be in the ocean. Atlantis is on the seabed, and has more abundant resources than land, rich in oil, natural gas, and polymetallic nodules of coal, sulfur, phosphorus, copper, nickel, cobalt, manganese and other metals. Deep sea manganese nodules, materials, and metal minerals are widely distributed in most sea basins. The ocean accounts for 71% of the Earth's surface, and contains more than 80 chemical elements. It is inherently larger than the land, and contains rich resources. Now only Atlantis can develop this kind of resources. How shocking. They have no need to trade with humans, and appear before humans. This appearance may even set off a war between countries for land. A mysterious island, Paradise Island, an island left over from the construction of Zeus. Do myths and magic really exist? Is magic a kind of science? What kind of huge impact do the gods in myths have on our people of faith? Some people speculated that this is the best era, the war has subsided, and science and technology have made great progress. Therefore, these peaceful countries will appear in front of us humans and build prosperity for the earth. Some people even shouted angrily, "Are you crazy? They are not a species at all. They are fish hiding in the seabed. Their needs are completely different." This is very likely to trigger the Third World War and snatch the sovereignty of human control of the earth. From the fact that they walked directly into the center of Rio without following the rules at all, we should understand that they are superior to us in thinking, and even regard us as ants. We should not drive them away with such malice. We should acknowledge their existence, acknowledge peaceful coexistence, cooperate in trade, develop peacefully on the earth, and win together. Eat shit. %% and *# the two hosts of Metropolitan TV got into a fight because of their radical words and actions and different opinions, and neither could convince the other. More TV stations and experts discussed the birth of the two countries and predicted the future direction of mankind. The whole world was instantly ignited by the birth of the two countries and the enthusiasm for discussion. Metropolis. The entire metropolis includes the city center, suburbs, suburban mountains and forests, with a total area of 15,732 square kilometers, of which the suburban plain forest area and mountainous area account for the majority of 80%. Even so, the urban area also has a world-class area and prosperity, especially in the harbor close to the Atlantic Ocean. 70 kilometers away from the shore, there is a huge group of Bamuluodi with an area of nearly 476 square kilometers, which is twice the area of Zhangguancun Science Park. The tallest building in the world, a pyramid-like Bamuluodi headquarters group. This is a pyramid, and then at the top of the upper part, which is about 7/10 of the pyramid, there is a towering building that reaches the sky with an overall height of 2,000 meters. This is 1,000 meters higher than the world's tallest building, the Kingdom Building in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, which is 1,007 meters high. In this world, no business group or country can build such a magnificent building. The surveyor who measured the scope of the foundation laughed madly. How could such a building be built? However, in just 10 years, this building that could not be built by manpower has been completed. In addition to the initial use of a large number of human construction on the periphery, since 1984, it is no longer humans who are working, but warriors with Kryptonian genes, magnetic particles, and artificial intelligence are used to build and distribute the entire structure. To build such a huge and magnificent building, in any place in the metropolis, looking up at the sky is enough to see the huge skyscrapers that rise to the sky. Every morning, when the sun shines out of the clouds, more than 1 million composite glass surfaces of this landmark building in the metropolis slowly spread their scales like a huge fish soaring into the sky, greedily absorbing the sun's energy. The morning sky of the entire metropolis is illuminated by this golden light with extremely gorgeous colors. The light spreads magnificently in the sky of the metropolis, rendering the metropolis into a huge fantasy world. The sky of the metropolis, in the morning and at dusk, is the most beautiful sky in the world. Therefore, every year, this extremely magnificent scene attracts many tourists from all over the world, who come here in amazement, and look up at this Bamuluodi building. Until Badi became the king, this building, unknowingly, became the emperor's building in people's mouths. Thousands of meters underground in this emperor's building. In the center of the underground laboratory, at the bottom, this is Badi's most secret place, with sci-fi steel walls, white material covering, multiple projections, and each different Hera model is controlled here. Here, the whole world is monitored, more than 1,700 satellites are controlled, and if necessary even global satellites can be controlled, sending pulse bands to destroy the entire human race on the Earth. It can be said that the entire ecosystem of the Earth, all life, is actually under the control of Badi. But that is just the cheapest life of ordinary people. There is too little benefit in harming them. The most important thing is the strange race of Amazon and the fish-like race of Atlantis. Badi has been looking for them for several years. Except for a few traces of Atlantis, which are occasionally seen by fishermen and left rumors, the entire Atlantis is hidden deep in the sea and difficult to be explored. Until today, the Atlanteans and Amazons have been truly seen. In the eyes of ordinary people, Atlantis, which controls the ocean, is more important for the control of marine resources and the resource crisis of mankind. In Badi's eyes, the mysterious Amazon female warriors are more important. Badi has no doubt that, as long as his Krypton army begins to conquer the earth, this group of Amazon female warriors made of mud will come out, each of which is not inferior to ordinary Kryptonian gene warriors, to fight him. Not to mention, behind the Amazons, there are the Olympian gods. They will not be willing to lose their faith and let themselves rule the earth easily. Of course, the bigger problem is that this group of mysterious Olympian gods, with their own high technology and ability, can't even find them. Badi's face is cold, and his eyes are as deep as a black hole. 10 years have passed, and he has not changed at all. His facial features are still tough and perfect, and his figure is tall and strong. He has a lot of awe-inspiring and irresistible dominance and the demeanor of a king. He gently rubbed the palm of his left hand with his right thumb, and stared at the image projection in front of him with his deep eyes. The Ocean Realm Orm and the Amazon warrior Antiope announced at the United Nations conference, "Land creatures, humans, Atlantis will be in front of you, and communicate and coexist with you. You should feel honored. Paradise Island will join the United Nations and rule the earth with you." Chapter 205 Green Lantern, The Flash. Orm in the Ocean Realm has narrow eyes and slightly sunken facial features, which gives him a gloomy feeling. His lips are thin, and when he talks and laughs, he has a kind of arrogant and cruel temperament, which makes people dare not look directly at him. Badi can tell from his appearance, language, and behavior. This is an ambitious, cruel, and brutal person. At the same time, he is arrogant and paranoid. He has the ambition to replace the position of Aquaman, but because his ability is always lower than that of his brother, he is angry, hateful, and jealous of his brother Aquaman all day long, so that the whole person becomes slightly neurotic and causes mental obsession. This kind of person can be easily used, as long as he caters to his preferences. But he is also a person who thinks highly of himself, arrogant, and self-centered, which makes him unable to see himself clearly. So, Your Majesty, I tried to invite him to dinner, but he was dismissive, and didn't take us seriously. He is quite proud of himself, and is proud of being a member of the Deep Sea tribe. He has a typical mentality of supremacy, and is secretly hostile to humans. Mike lowered his head slightly, and reported to Badi. At the moment, when the UN meeting was abnormal, he used the full image mask to record the communication, and passed it to Badi. This is a kind of macro communication technology. The contact lens is implanted in the eyeball, which can form an eye mask projection, communication, recording, and self-detection. It is connected to Badi's huge satellite internal network, and can even simply detect the body heat and energy value of a creature. It is a kind of auxiliary equipment for internal personnel with multiple combat functions and integrated technology. As early as when the two appeared at the UN meeting, more than a dozen leaders controlled by Badi, including Luthor, notified Badi of the appearance of Atlantis and Amazon through the contact lens. On the other side, the projected Luthor brought good news. Your Majesty, Amazon Antiope has agreed to visit Bamulodi. Antiope is the sister of the Amazon Queen. From a few words, we know that Amazon has a good impression of humans. Luthor's bald head slightly lowered to show respect. Since Badi took charge of a country and directly became the king of a country, there is no longer those market titles of boss and big man. It naturally changes to Your Majesty, the title of the king of a country. Badi nodded and understood it clearly. In any comics, Amazon seems to be naturally close to humans, and puts himself in a role of protecting. This has great value. Greet the Amazon visitor. After saying this, Badi turned off Luthor's projection. Then, Mike, kill him. I will send someone to cooperate with you. Badi's emotionless voice gave the order, which directly made Mike's breathing stagnate, and his pupils contract. This is going to war. It is conceivable that the killing of the brother of the Atlantis Ocean Lord, Aquaman, by humans will cause a huge wave, and a global war may break out between the two races. It is even possible that because of this, the Amazons, who are close to humans, will directly turn to Atlantis. but there is a greater chance that the Amazons will work together with humans to stop the angry king of the sea, Aquaman. Of course, Badi can also instigate the Ocean Lord Orm to cooperate with him to cause a war, but that is too slow. The arrogance of the Ocean Lord Orm and his inability to see himself and the situation clearly will do harm. Relatively speaking, his death will cause a series of tidal waves, which is more suitable for Badi's plan. At this time, when everything is ready, Atlantis and Amazon have already appeared. There is no need to be slow. It is time for war to come. Yes, Mike responded with a stern face, and then the projection communication was closed. Badi didn't want Atlantis to come out and develop peacefully. He just wanted Amazon to come out, to protect humanity and fight Atlantis, and both sides would suffer. Or, they could unite and attack humanity together, so that Badi could directly coordinate all of humanity and fight a war of destruction that would make even the earth tremble. All the living forces that could hinder him would be beaten out, killed, and disabled. That would be enough. Badi's eyes were deep in thought, standing in the vast underground main command room, surrounded by many identical Hera-type bio-humans, wearing uniform white tights, with charming figures and graceful postures, manipulating electronic projections to flash, execute his orders, collect data and information from the entire Earth, analyze and gather them, and finally be given orders by him. Master, in the direction of Andromeda, 3 light years away from the Earth today, a small escape capsule suddenly appeared and headed towards the Earth. A Hera-type person next to Badi reported clearly. Spaceship? At this time, alien visitors? Badi frowned slightly. At this time, the Earth was in trouble because of him. Any external things might hinder him. In this universe, there are too many things that can easily change a planet. He is not sure what this one is. How long will it take for it to reach the Earth directly? Badi asked. He needed to block it directly with the help of this external thing. At the current average speed of the spacecraft, according to calculations, it will reach the Earth directly in about 170 hours. Keep an eye on it. About 3 light years away from the Earth, in a small escape spacecraft. A man with deep red skin, bald head, wearing a green energy tights, known as the greatest Green Lantern of the time, Abinsu, was lying in the spacecraft. His Green Lantern Corps uniform had a large hole with a diameter of about 10 centimeters on the left chest. The granulation was turned over, and the organs inside had been messed up into a paste. Purple blood splashed on the slightly shiny Green Lantern uniform. Abinsu's eyes began to blur, his mouth and tongue were dry, and his whole body was no longer supplied with blood by his heart. He was so weak that he could not move at all. He relied entirely on his willpower to hold onto the Green Lantern ring to maintain his life. His eyes narrowed slightly, his lips trembled, and the Green Lantern ring on his finger flashed his will slightly. I am seriously injured. The Parallax monster is out of control. Green Lantern ring. Go to the nearest habitable planet and start the selection process. It requires the strongest will. Scoverall. This is an island near Indonesia, a backward island that is shrouded in electromagnetic thunderstorm clouds all year round and has no modern information technology. Similarly, this is also Badi, a place where satellites in the sky have difficulty receiving information, and electromagnetic thunderstorm clouds disrupt all electromagnetic waves. Bruce Wayne has grown up. At the age of 21, he has a resolute and tough face, firm eyes with a little tiredness and vicissitudes, and a strong body. He has survived to this day through constant exercise and constant battles with the trackers of Bamulodi. His body has long reached the limit of human beings. Years of fleeing have cost him a lot of energy, so that his eyes are always full of vicissitudes of wisdom and the sharp coldness of a young man. He carried the unconscious Barry Allen on his back. Barry's face and hands were severely burned and scalded, and his skin and flesh were charred, as if he had been burned by the most violent flames. Bruce's strong hands were still carrying a huge package. Feeling Barry's slightly panting breath, his heart was twisted. He gritted his teeth. A painful light flashed in his eyes, and stepped into the mountains and forests. Barry, you will become the Flash. Chapter 206. He has changed. An island near Indonesia. Texcaval in the dense forest. Shrubs grow thickly, and trees are abnormally tall and lush due to the abnormal magnetic field. The enchanting and bright colored man-eating plants emit a strong fragrance. In the sunlight, the gaps between the leaves cast a little gloomy light, and the cool breeze blows in from the leaves, with a faint rustling sound. The rising methane from the ground, accompanied by muffled thunder, can easily make people feel uneasy. Bang, boom. The sky is always filled with the anger of explosion, and the thunder rumbles in the dark clouds. Every moment, it roars impatiently, and explodes with a huge sound. Here, this is the norm. An active fiery red-billed cuckoo suddenly flew to the branch. This is a bird with a brown upper body, dark blue lower body and tail, yellow upper beak, red lower beak, and a small black dot on the tip of the beak. It is a beautiful equatorial color bird. It jumps actively and lightly on the branch, with narrow eyes, like black gems, spiritually staring at the ground. Crack. Bruce's thick-soled black combat boots were covered with mud and dead leaves along the way, and half of the upper was dirty. He stepped on a branch and broke it. He looked up and saw the strange bat through the fragmented gloomy light coming through the trees in the dense forest. His face was gloomy, and he ran faster into the dense forest. Barry behind him had multiple burns on his face and body. His skin was cooked and blackened. Before this, they had tried twice to make Barry the Flash. Obviously, it was unlucky. Barry did not become the Flash. Bruce's method of controlling electric current and the chemical potion were not enough to make Barry the Flash. Barry needed the natural lightning between heaven and earth, the ability given to him by the Speed Force. Feeling the sudden acceleration and ups and downs, Barry came out of his coma, weak and confused. He opened his eyes. Now his body was in a bad state. The various chemical potions corroded his internal organs, making his bones feel sore, and without a trace of strength. Is he following us? Barry moaned vaguely. Bruce had lived with him for several years, and knew Barry in his memory. Even with his vague voice, he could still recognize what Barry meant. Hold on. Bruce did not answer directly. After giving a warning, he lowered his head and quickly opened up a dense forest path with his feet. His body was running faster and faster, trying to take on all the thorny branches that passed by. He moved forward quickly and protected Barry, stepping on the dead leaves and bushes. The red-billed cuckoo on the high branch chirped and spread its wings as if mockingly. It began to fly flexibly between the branches, performing fancy acrobatics and jumping, following Bruce forward. As expected, when it jumped to a branch, a small black shadow arrived in advance, and the red-billed cuckoo seemed to hit it by itself. With a whoosh, a small arrow was shot from Bruce's arm and hit the jumping red-billed cuckoo directly, at a perfect angle, in the position that was expected in advance. The flaming red-billed cuckoo seemed stunned, its body frozen in disbelief. It was pierced by arrows, its feathers fluttering dimly in the gloomy light, drops of blood splashing among the green leaves. Small arrows flew into the sky, and it fell to the ground. The flaming red-billed cuckoo fell to the ground covered with dead leaves, and died just like that. Bruce said nothing. The sky was dark and thunderous. The cold wind passed by with freezing and irritating air molecules, irritating the pores of his skin, and the weak heat rising from the ground made him feel hot. He did not stop, quickly trampled on the dead leaves and bushes, protected Barry, and ran quickly, and threw a few inconspicuous small bombs in some necessary corners, setting up powerful traps. In this dangerous run and escape, Barry was shaking up and down behind Bruce, as if he had woken up a little. He couldn't help but laugh softly, which moved the burnt cooked flesh on his face, bringing tearing pain, making him groan. He was in pain, groaning, and then laughed and cried. He has become better than the ones we know. Polite, well-mannered, with a straight lumbar spine, and he doesn't smile. This is what a British gentleman is like. As Bruce ran faster and faster, Barry stumbled and spoke vaguely, as if he was mumbling to himself before his death, reviewing the course of his life. The wind was a little cool, with a chill, blowing slightly, irritating the skin of the two. Bruce stretched out his arms to block a branch with thorns. The branch scratched the thin close-fitting Kevlar armor on Bruce's arm, making a slight sound. The branch bent and bounced heavily, but finally did not touch Barry's body, and bounced back to its original shape. That's not him, Bruce said in a deep voice. In his memory, that guy was a mean, shameless, cheap, shameless, sloppy, drinking, gambling, buying prostitutes, and having no character, which disgusted many people. However, when something serious happened, he was a trustworthy guy, but he was definitely not an English gentleman. Bamulodi twisted him and turned him into a tool. Bamulodi's education is really scary. Barry felt weak inside, as if his internal organs were so weak that they didn't exist, and were so weak that they were old. He leaned on Bruce's back, his eyes began to blur, and he felt the horror of Bamulodi. They had been hiding for several years, but he was in great danger just by being his subordinates, and they almost died several times. Many familiar heroes and villains in their memories were found by him to deal with and restrict them. What a terrible person. Bruce was silent. He had the most profound understanding of the horror of Bamulodi. He just wanted to test it, and even the Wayne group, which had been passed down for hundreds of years, was directly destroyed. He was reduced to a wingless bat, hiding in the darkest corners everywhere, and it was difficult to see the sun. The two were silent. The dark clouds in the sky were flashing with lightning again, and the rumbling sound spread throughout the area. Crack in an instant, the sky and the earth flashed a pale color, and the pale light made people horrified. The huge sound penetrated everything, shaking the air, frightening the whole forest and trembling, and many different birds flew out from the branches. The cold wind in the sky began to grow. Bruce's footsteps were fast. He crossed the dense forest, stepped out of the bushes, and tore the vines apart fiercely. Finally, he saw the destination. A relatively high hill, with no trees around, could allow Barry to be struck by lightning, and bear all the damage without being scattered by the trees. He quickly stepped on the soft grass ground and carefully placed Barry on the highest point of the hill. He took out the fragile test tubes from the package, and the colorful chemicals were all based on his memory. When Barry was struck by lightning, he splashed on his body and had super speed, and the chemicals evaporated at the moment. Bruce placed all the test tubes on Barry's chest, and then supported a thick lightning rod to accumulate electromagnetic movement. When he finished all this, Bruce stared at Barry, whose face had been burned, with a deep look of hesitation and pain in his eyes. If he failed this time, Barry would die directly. Barry tore his burned lips, revealing his snow-white teeth. His eyes seemed to be completely focused on the last moment of his life, and his hands were slightly raised. Bruce took over and held Barry's hand. The two held hands tightly. "If I don't become the Flash, please take care of me." "I know," Bruce replied. In the distance, a flash of lightning flashed in the sky, reflecting the paleness of this moment. Bang! In the forest, on the road they passed by when they came, there was an explosion. It was the trap set by Bruce when he came, which was triggered. Bruce's heart trembled, and he let go of Barry's hand, and walked forward to the newcomer. The newcomer didn't seem to be surprised by the trap set by Bruce. Even if it was triggered, it didn't hurt him. A corner of the forest was blown up, and flames and black smoke burned up. He was wearing a long windbreaker, brown, with a black, deep on his back. Under the cold wind, the hem of the windbreaker fluttered, ruffling his golden hair. He walked leisurely in the exploding forest. As the sparks flew, a cigarette appeared between his fingers. The sparks seemed to just splash to his hand. He raised his fingers lightly, and the cigarette touched the sparks and lit the cigarette immediately. The handsome face with British features, and the neat white shirt under the brown windbreaker, showed that he was very graceful and elegant, just like a gentleman. He took a deep puff of cigarette, exhaled the smoke, looked at Bruce's alert look, and said calmly, "Please let me kill you, and complete the task as soon as possible. Thank you." Chapter 207 Batman vs Constantine. The environment was somewhat gloomy. The sky rumbled continuously, and the dark clouds seemed to be roaring and rolling restlessly. Discovery Island was so restless with dark clouds for more than 90% of the time throughout the year, and the thunder flashed with frightening anxiety. Now, after Bruce set up the lightning rod, the electric charge on the lightning rod sizzled, and the silver arcs began to stretch around. The magnetic field was restless, and the weeds on the grass were slightly affected, and stood up straight. The accumulated magnetic field charges were extremely chaotic, and seemed to be connected with the dark clouds in the sky. Boom. The arcs gathered near Barry caused the restlessness of the entire dark cloud and thunder, containing violent thunder, and flashed a pale light in the thick dark cloud, like a pale giant beast struggling out of the dark cloud, which was terrifying. The wind whistled coldly, and streaked through the messy hair of the two people. Bang. Thunder struck, illuminating the entire forest. Thunder struck in the distance, causing rocks to fly, soil to explode, and a charred pit to form. Sparks repeatedly burned the nearby wet weeds. The pale light was reflected on Bruce and Constantine's faces. "John." Bruce's voice was low, and the wind blew his black hair wildly, coldly piercing his skin. His eyes were filled with regret and calm anger. This was not the John he knew, the bastard magician. Instead, it was a young British gentleman with an elegant and charming handsome face. Although his blonde hair was blowing in the cold wind, it was combined with the fluttering hem of his windbreaker, making him look even more elegant and charming in his messiness. "I'm not that familiar with you. Please call me Mr. Constantine." Constantine's handsome and charming face smiled, and his windbreaker fluttered in the cold wind, reflecting his golden hair. At any time, he was showing the charming charm of a gentleman. Bruce's face was cold, and his heart was filled with cold anger. He hated what Badi had done to Constantine. He completely changed all people and things, and distorted the heart that originally belonged to a hero. This was no longer Constantine. In everyone's impression, Constantine should be a bastard. He looked a little unruly and sloppy, with a few roots on his chin, showing a mature and unruly prodigal son, like a lonely traveler, always independent, and especially different from others. In the eyes of young women, this image has an inexplicable attraction. And now, what the hell is this gentleman? In fact, Badi could not accept Constantine's image at all. Under him, he had to follow his rules and be well behaved. In this regard, Badi had a little obsessive compulsive disorder. He could not stand the guy who did not follow the rules like Constantine. Either he followed his rules, or he would be crushed to death by him. The sloppy, sighing, and dissolute appearance on his face would only make Badi want to slap him to death. So the 12-year-old Constantine, who had been guided by magic and mental suggestion from the beginning, after 7 years of twisting, bending, confusing the mind, guiding, and forcibly guiding, was turned into an obedient gentleman. In this way, this very charming, well-behaved, twisted Constantine was born. For this, Badi even smiled and nodded in a friendly manner, very satisfied with this shuikan created by his own hands. "It's over." Constantine maintained a gentlemanly smile on his face, and the cigarette between his fingers trembled, and sparks splashed in the cool wind, and suddenly it grew in the wind and quickly expanded to half the size of a person. The half-human-sized fireball suddenly baked the cool wind with scorching heat. In an instant, the temperature spread out, and the scorching red light reflected the dark environment around it red. The skin exposed on Bruce's face instantly felt a scorching temperature spreading and surging over. The hot heat baked his skin, and there was even a hint of burnt smell, roasting the tiny hairs on his face, and scorching and curling up. At the moment the fireball expanded, Bruce's eyes narrowed coldly, and the bat wings behind him had already expanded and retracted. The bat wings directly broke away from his back and hit the fireball. He shrank his body and rolled over. Bang! The bat wings met the fireball and immediately set off a violent explosion. The bat wings were covered with a film-like fireproof material, but this obviously could not prevent the explosion of magic. The bat wings were instantly torn into several pieces like rags and exploded in all directions. The hot heat wave burst out in all directions. The huge explosion blew a charred pit under the grass, and sparks flew everywhere, igniting the wet weeds. The blast wave directly made Constantine's windbreaker flutter wildly. He took a step back slightly, his eyes narrowed. Bruce was thrown away, and the strong air wave hit his body. Most of it was absorbed by the armor on his body, and a small part was supported by his human body. He rolled on the ground. While rolling, he suddenly pulled out 2 bat darts from his waist with both hands, and shot them at Constantine in the direction of the airflow. The bat darts were completely inaccurate, and only slightly stopped Constantine's steps to move forward. The 2 bat darts flew past Constantine, and flew into the sky. When Batman got up flexibly from the roll, he already held 2 black modified pistols in his hands and shot toy bullets like BB bullets directly at Constantine. This kind of bullet was faster than ordinary bullets. When flying, it exploded completely, forming a grey-green irritating smoke, which enveloped Constantine. This is fear gas. In Bruce's future memory, he faced Scarecrow and captured him, and knew the formula of fear gas. Snap, snap, snap. As Bruce stood up, Constantine raised his eyebrows slightly, flicked the cigarette in his hand into the air, and snapped his fingers 3 times in a row. In this burning space, the snapping sounded like a harsh drum beat, ringing in the hearts of both of them. The surging smoke of fear gas, like the rolling Yangtze River, was fixed at the moment when it was less than 5 centimeters away from his body. Time seemed to be suspended at this moment. The moment was frozen. Bruce and the fear gas, the air in the entire space, had solidified and could not move. In fact, this was just a magic to control the air, far from achieving time suspension. The air seemed to have weight in an instant, weighing down Bruce's body. Bruce felt himself suddenly overwhelmed by the heavy pressure in an instant, kneeling on one knee on the ground. The air seemed to have turned into weight. With his human strength, he could lift 800 pounds. He had no resistance at all. His muscles were instantly tense, and his veins were taut. They bulged out from his skin like a dragon swimming. Under his chin, he gritted his teeth, and held back a thick vein. It was visible through the soft armor that Karav was wearing. He knelt on one knee with sweat dripping down his face. His heart was suppressed to the point of exploding. His ears were filled with the rumbling sound of his own blood and heart. It was especially loud and uncomfortable. He couldn't breathe through his mouth and nose. The feeling of suffocation enveloped his heart. Even if his spine was straight, it couldn't stop this huge weight. In the end, he was sweating profusely and was pressed to the ground. His capillaries were bleeding, his eyes were bulging, and bloodshot quickly spread from the whites of his eyes and bulged out. It was extremely scary. The sweat on his face was clearly visible mixed with the blood from his pores. Constantine looked down from above, coldly watching Bruce, who was crushed to the ground by the magic that increased the air quality. Bruce could no longer speak. Even if he clenched his teeth tightly, he could not resist the gravity created by this powerful magic. He could not even move a finger. Under this kind of pressure, as long as it lasted for more than 5 seconds, the strongest human would die from the explosion of internal organs. And in the second moment, behind Constantine, the pair of bat darts were already flashing with blue arcs and began to swirl and fly crosswise to his back. Then, the dark clouds and thunder in the sky were restless and agitated and were attracted by the bat darts. Chapter 208 Thunder Roar, The Rage of Speed. Constantine turned around, calmly and composedly, flicked his left hand, and suddenly the wind surged like a real river. The airflow rushed towards the 2 bat darts that were intersecting and flashing with arcs. At the same time, he raised his right hand over his shoulder and held the cigarette between his fingers. He was neat and unrestrained, and he held the cigarette between his fingertips in a graceful manner, squinting at the sky. The wind blew his golden hair and lifted the hem of his windbreaker. The huge dark clouds covered the sky, boundless, covering him like a tiny ant facing the sky. The thunder in the dark clouds was already flickering restlessly. No big deal. Constantine raised the corner of his mouth, calm and composed, and did not feel any surprise about what happened next. He had experienced thousands of simulated battles, and on average, he had to face 60 battles with superpowers of different abilities every day, including mental, extreme speed, fire, ice, rock, physical combat, magic, and all kinds of strange and powerful abilities. Constantine's combat experience had been tempered in those real simulated battles. He could face any battle calmly at any time. This kind of battle was child's play for him. At this moment, Constantine let go of his suppression of Bruce. The blue Argaris rune flashed on his windbreaker, mixed with Greek secret text, and together with the on the back of the windbreaker, it emitted a soft blue light, forming a protective magic circle. A blue magic shield instantly wrapped him. At this moment, the thunder in the sky had begun to vent its anger. A thick thunderbolt rushed directly towards the batarang, violently impacting. The airflow impact was instantly dispersed, and the silver-white dazzling thunderbolt struck the batarang that was interlaced and flashing with arcs. Bang! The extreme heat of the lightning caused the air along the way to expand violently, and the air moved rapidly, forming waves and making sounds. The batarang exploded and destroyed the moment it came into contact with the lightning. The huge impact force rushed towards Constantine, and the magic shield immediately rippled with huge waves. Due to the close distance and the violent air explosion, Constantine was directly pushed back. Constantine's knees were slightly bent, his spine leaned forward, his body tilted to the right, and his hands were in front. The leather shoes on his feet plowed 2 long pits, and his windbreaker was close to his heels. At 13 meters, his body was slightly stagnant and stopped. The back of the windbreaker was lifted up by the airflow. The magic shield reflected continuous ripples as it kept retreating. Finally, the ripples and waves vibrated and disappeared as Constantine stopped. Constantine stood up straight, still calm and composed, with a normal look. The magic shield isolated him from most of the sound wave impact and physical impact, but it just wasted some of his magic power. On the contrary, Bruce, who was not far away, was more unlucky. He was already unable to move due to Constantine's air-weighting magic, and now he was enjoying the lightning strike at such a close distance. His body was directly blown away, and rolled as far as 30 meters. He had no choice but to stand up. His muscles were sore all over. His eardrums were buzzing, and the sky was full of buzzing. He was temporarily deaf. The sound of the airburst was too loud, and his eye membrane was congested and protruding. He almost fell into a coma. Barry. Bruce gritted his teeth and groaned. His firm will supported his painful body and the deafness and tinnitus of the irritating and huge painful sound. His eye membrane was full of blood. He looked at Barry through the red retina. Unexpectedly, Barry's eyes were always on Bruce. The two looked at each other. Bruce was stunned, and the corners of his mouth suddenly raised reluctantly. His eyes were congested, as if he had a strong and unparalleled will. Never give in. Barry looked at Bruce, looking at him with painful eyes. The two could only look at each other from a distance, struggling in their hearts, that they had no strength to save each other from pain. Seeing Bruce at this moment, Barry's heart seemed to be torn apart. Tears were stored in his eyes, and he gritted his teeth in pain and anger. Barry wailed, heartbroken and angry at the culprit of all this. The person who caused his brother, Bruce, to be on the verge of death at this moment. Give me speed. Speed force. Let me save Bruce. Barry roared in pain. He needed strength. He needed speed. He needed to be the Flash. At this time, the thunder caused by the bat darts became completely violent. In an instant, the dark clouds in the sky rolled and thunder flashed. Constantine suddenly felt a little scalp numb, and the pricking on his body warned of danger. Barry's lightning rod, the accumulated charge, was too huge. The arcs were hitting randomly in the nearby area. Some fine dust floated up without weight, and the grass roots stood upright, wishing to pull themselves up. The whole scene was simply Barry's tribulation. The dark clouds in the sky were rolling endlessly, slightly like a funnel, leaning down towards Barry. A terrifying doomsday thunder was raging, and the thunder of the sun was roaring and raging. Constantine took a breath, and the world seemed to be angry and roaring for this moment. Thunder arcs emerged from the dark clouds, and electric snakes and pythons kept swimming, cracking with violent anger. Constantine was secretly frightened in his heart, and cast a magic circle for himself again. Then his feet left the ground, and floated away quickly, not daring to stay nearby. The next moment, something unexpected happened. The dark clouds that were slightly pouring down like a hole, the violent electric snakes gathered, like in the black sky, rumbling and gathering into a violent and angry sound, roaring like a giant dragon's thunder, rushing towards the ground. It was like a silver white light suddenly coming from the dark distance of deep space, as expected, and shocking thunder, piercing the world. The air expanded and exploded in an instant, because of the thunder, forming a huge wave impact, rushing towards the distance. Trees tilted, uprooted, and grass was hit, and lying on the ground. The extremely violent silver white lightning seemed to connect the endless dark clouds in the sky and the earth, and it violently impacted. Barry was instantly submerged in it. His body seemed to float up in it. His voice roared in pain. His face, skin, muscles, bones, all of which were submerged in the silver white thunder, and disappeared. At the moment, when the thunder flashed, Bruce's eyes were blinded by the thunder. The extremely violent and dazzling silver light blinded his eyes like a needle, painfully. Even if he closed his eyelids, he could still see the infinite silver light shining in front of him. Then, the violent shockwave, along with the grass and trees, once again lifted his broken body. He still, gritting his teeth, lost consciousness in the air, and fell into the ruins of the trees, his life or death unknown. Thunder appeared in an instant, and the next moment, this shocking thunder disappeared again. When the furious thunder disappeared, everything in the world seemed to be silent. Barry was in the sky. His whole body had turned into a charcoal, slowly falling down. Constantine was in the distance, standing on a huge tree that had fallen and half uprooted, with his spine straight, his windbreaker fluttering slightly behind him, looking up, squinting slightly, and watching Barry's charred body falling. When it was about to fall to the ground, the charred body suddenly turned over flexibly, clenched his fists, knelt on one knee, and the charred pieces on his body cracked and fell to the ground, revealing Barry's white body inside. The yellow arc of electricity spread and rose from under Barry's feet in an instant, and the dust on the ground rose with the weightlessness of the arc. The yellow arc of electricity crossed every inch of Barry's skin and hair, like an angry lion, rising madly, fiercely slapping and hitting the dust, and the surrounding was filled with suffocating angry roars. Barry looked up. His hair was frantically rising and messing up. His face was angry, his eyes were filled with red veins, and he roared, and flashed violent yellow arcs, and his anger exploded in an instant. "John, you dare to hurt Bruce? I will kill you." Pong. Chapter 209 Constantine. Barry, Bruce. Barry stood up with his chest puffed out. Above his head dark clouds were thick and thunder was gathering and roaring, as if corresponding to his rage. Yellow arcs of electricity rose from under his feet, crackling and hitting the dust that was floating in the air without weight. He was like a lightning god in the thunder, bathing in the yellow arcs of electricity. The dark clouds and roaring thunder above his head rumbled, crowning him with the crown of angry thunder. Barry's face was angry, with blue veins faintly spreading along with the yellow arcs. The yellow arcs in his eyes frantically passed through, and finally gathered into crazy arc pupils, and his hair blew upwards restlessly. Bruce spurted blood, his eyes were bloodshot and painful. In order to protect him, the blood was spilled in front of him, which made Barry's heart burst out with huge anger that he couldn't help. In the past few years, they have been chased by the organization under Bamulodi, fleeing in panic, asking for help helplessly, feeling betrayed, being hunted down, and being abandoned. All these accumulated emotions, the depression and pain of the past few years, plus Bruce's bloodshed at this moment, and his hatred for Bamulodi, all burst out at this moment, along with the flashing of yellow arcs, his super speed, and surging emotions ignited and exploded in an instant. The surrounding environment was immediately in extreme anxiety, filled with a terrifying and dangerous atmosphere. Barry stepped forward, like a golden thunder god of war, the yellow arcs swirling around his body, chaotically rioting, and angry and restless, covering his body. Where he stepped, his feet cracked and cracked. In the instant of lightning and thunder, boom, the world did not react. A hole appeared in the place filled with dangerous and terrifying atmosphere. It seemed that the world was like a piece of plastic wrap, which was penetrated by Barry, leaving behind a terrifying yellow arc of electricity, closely chasing Barry's figure. It seemed that between heaven and earth, Barry stepped out of a portal, and a huge sonic boom cloud immediately appeared on the spot. The shrieking and screaming sound waves of the impact penetrated the sky, and the dark clouds in the sky were slightly startled, and the thunder roared and fell back. The whole world, at a very quiet moment, suddenly exploded with the most crazy and violent movement. Constantine instantly felt the violent movement of his body, and every cell stimulated his nerves. Every bit of magic energy told him how dangerous Barry's crazy anger would be. The magic power of his body subconsciously surged completely, rushing into the brown windbreaker, and the windbreaker showed more mysterious patterns than before, like a circuit board, continuous magic energy, and azure lines connected to the behind. The symbol glowed brightly, bursting out and combining into the strongest magic array, once again forming a deep, dark blue magic shield, so dark that the figure inside, Constantine's face, could not be seen clearly. At this moment, Barry had already arrived. His speed was so fast that it seemed that he could penetrate the Earth's space with one step, and was already in front of Constantine. The surging yellow electric current was pulling behind him, and the arcs on his body were swirling, tearing the air in two sides like a rag. The slow explosion behind him, and the huge waves of dust were just beginning to surge at the position where he was running. Barry was furious, his face was bulging with blue veins, and the arcs were roaring wildly. He rushed to meet the thick magic shield with his fists carrying yellow arcs. The huge kinetic energy was wasted by Barry with the speed forced to accelerate, and hit the thick dark blue magic shield. Bang! The yellow arc seemed to hit the steel, climbing all over the surface of the dark blue magic shield, twisting and scattering like a small snake, and disappeared in an instant. Then there was a dull sound like a drum, hitting the sky and the earth. Where the fist and the deep blue magic shield collided, a huge sonic boom exploded, uprooting all the trees nearby, splashing the soil, and the huge sound spread throughout the sky and the earth, and the sound waves spread violently. The superimposed kinetic energy of the Speed Force, in just a short period of about 200 meters, has reached a terrifying force. The deep blue magic shield was directly hit into the sky by Barry, and the surface rippled wildly, like the ripples of crazy waves in the ocean. The magic shield, which was so deep blue that no one could see, was constantly consumed by the ripples under this kinetic energy. It was only when it flew into the sky that it was consumed to a thin layer, and Constantine's figure, who was no longer a gentleman, was clearly seen. Constantine felt as if his body was hit by a train. His internal organs were displaced, and he gritted his teeth and groaned in pain on his handsome face. His heartbeat was irregular and uneasily beating, and his blood was stagnant instantly. He felt suffocated and uncomfortable, and a mouthful of blood rushed to his mouth from the vibration of his internal organs. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of scarlet blood directly into the thin magic shield, staining his white shirt red. The pungent smell of blood instantly spread to the tip of his nose. His ears began to vibrate, and his eardrums began to bear the pain. His vision began to blur. With one breath, his body squeezed out the last bit of magic power, and could only barely maintain the magic shield. At this time, Barry's angry eyes did not stop staring at the magic shield in the air, and the yellow arcs on his body began to spread more crazily from his feet again. His right hand began to rotate and vibrate, carrying yellow arcs, rotating and guiding all the arcs on his body, gathering in his right hand, and guiding a yellow electric light vortex. The surrounding sand and stones were dragged up with his crazy rotation, and were about to form a thunder tornado vortex. Barry stopped instantly, and a round lightning ball spun out in his hand. Following the rotating track, a stream of light flashed, and he threw it towards the sky and hit the magic shield. The magic shield rippled in an instant and was extinguished. The violent friction of sizzle rubbed the magic shield to the point of extinguishing it. The brown windbreaker could not bear it, and shattered into a molecular state and dissipated. Ah! Constantine screamed in pain, and the lightning ball turned into thousands of arc snakes, drilling into Constantine's body, shocking him so much that he trembled, and fell from the sky like a seizure patient. After seeing Constantine was killed, Barry's angry eyes turned into worry. At this time, the dust behind Barry's running finally arrived, causing huge waves to roll. The sky seemed to have torn a crack from the thick dark clouds because of such a violent run. Barry found Bruce in the ruins of the trees and hugged him with a painful expression. It was like a tragic war, a tragic oil painting with thick brush strokes. The sun shone through the cracks in the dark clouds, a ray of dawn in the dark environment, illuminating the sad and painful face of Barry standing upright in the ruins of the trees. Bruce, who was holding him, was blinded and covered in blood, with his hands hanging down from the side. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210. There is a traitor among us. Solomon Islands, Pennsylvania City. In a basement in the slums. The basement is quite large, with bright yellow lights, and 6 people are crammed in. Barry, Bruce, Constantine, Hal, Victor, and an old man from the Javanese tribe in Indonesia, over 50 years old, with grey hair and deep wrinkles on his face, Jacob. He is also the one who provides them with help, and has good medical knowledge. Once, Bruce was chased by Bamulodi, and used him, and several other people to test Badi, to test how much of the future Badi knew, how much of the future he knew about their Justice League, and how much of the future of the heroes of this world. Bruce believes that Badi knows a certain future, and has made advance arrangements in all aspects, and has dealt with various heroes and villains in a preemptive manner, winning them over, killing them, or luring them to his own men. But he only knows the general experiences of most heroes and villains. In the past few years, Bruce has obtained a lot of information about Badi through clues, guesses, and tests. The future that Badi knew must not be as detailed and meticulous as the future memory he obtained. Otherwise, they would not have been able to successfully hide everywhere while Badi was monitoring the whole world. After all, comics do not draw Bruce urinating and defecating, nor do they draw a real Bruce who helps some unexciting characters. This made Bruce realize that Bamulodi did not really know the future, but only knew the general deeds of the characters. These passers-by who have never appeared in the comics are the objects Bruce uses to hide and seek help. Jacob is one of them. In the future, when Batman passed by Indonesia, he helped him take back his granddaughter who was kidnapped by human traffickers, and received his gratitude. Now it is different. It is Bruce and others who help him solve the problem of being threatened by the gangs, and they also receive his gratitude and temporary shelter. At this moment, the bright yellow light illuminates the entire basement. Bruce was bandaged all over, his eyes were red and swollen, and he was blind. He was lying on a wooden bed that smelled of decay. His unconscious face was tightly frowned, and from time to time he groaned in pain from his unconscious teeth. On the other side, Constantine was also in a coma, but his injuries were much better than Bruce's. Strictly speaking, he was much stronger than ordinary people, because he knew magic, but he was now tied up like a dumpling with hemp rope. His spinal nerves have been severely compressed, shaking the nerves connecting his brain to the lower body, and his internal organs are seriously damaged. To be honest, his will to survive is amazing, and he should be able to wake up soon. But, his lower body is likely to be unable to move in the future, and in severe cases, he may even be paralyzed and become a vegetable. Jacob shook his head gently, wrinkling his dark wrinkles, and said, "For a while, the whole stuffy basement was filled with unacceptable breath." Barry was silent, staring at Bruce on the bed, with unspeakable pain in his heart. Bruce was trying to protect him. Damn it. Hal angrily punched the wall with his fist. With a bang, the light shook a few times. His face turned red and quicksand flowed from the cracks in the wall. We should have given the exoskeleton armor to Bruce. We failed to find Aquaman, and were almost tracked by the dog nose. Hal's eyes were angry, and he gritted his teeth. They acted separately from Bruce Badi, but their actions were not smooth. Because of the birth of Atlantis and Paradise Island, both parties were too much in the spotlight. It was difficult for them to find opportunities and they were almost discovered by Badi's men. Facing Badi's dragnet pursuit, they were too embarrassed and full of anger. Now Bruce made it like this again. Hal's temper escalated. "Calm down. Bruce will be fine." Victor's face was gloomy and his big hand was placed on the angry Hal's shoulder. Bruce's current situation made them feel sad and painful. Although everyone was mentally prepared to face the darkness, the moment it came was still unbearable. "Fuck." Hal thrust his shoulders in anger and directly pushed away Victor's big hand. Seeing that the culprit was lying not far from Bruce, Hal rushed forward in anger and punched Constantine's calf, causing a large swelling on Constantine's calf. Ouch. Constantine, who was unconscious, was awakened by the pain in an instant. He stared with his eyes wide open, gasped and twisted his face, arched his bound body, and gritted his teeth. His body had just been automatically repaired by magic, but Hal made his bones creak and break. He was in great pain. He is no longer the same John. It will not help if you hit him. Barry's face changed gloomily. He mourned for the former hero, but also felt sad for Bruce's current situation. "I enjoyed hitting him." Hal didn't care. He roared, urgently needing to vent his depressed mood, and raised his fist again, and hit Constantine in the stomach. Bang. With one punch, Constantine, who was tied to the bed, was bent like a shrimp. His stomach was twitching, and he automatically recovered a lot of magic power. He was repairing his body and recovering, but his pain and injuries were aggravated. Barry and Victor ignored it. They had been under a lot of pressure all the time. Now Bruce was lying in bed, which made them feel more depressed and irritable. Not to mention how, even they wanted to beat Constantine severely to vent their anger. Therefore, except for Jacob, who stared at Hal with wide eyes in shock, no one else reacted. They all knew that Hal knew the limit and would not beat people to death. "No, I'm still your dear John." Constantine couldn't stand it anymore. He couldn't keep his gentlemanly manners at all. His stomach kept twitching and vomited yellow bile. He vomited a large mouthful of gastric juice, feeling extremely uncomfortable and nauseous, and bent like a shrimp. When Hal raised his next punch, his angry face was obviously more powerful than before. His face changed color in horror. Constantine's face quickly turned serious and solemn, and he said, "I have always admired you rebels. Why does Bamulodi have 31 top-notch secretaries? All kinds of black and white silk, and small uniforms make people feel itchy. This is too enviable. Secretaries do things when there is work, and secretaries do things when there is nothing to do. Why is he the most outstanding man in Time magazine? The man who wants to spend a night with beautiful women the most, and the #1 man. My handsomeness is not inferior. Are they blind? He has everything in the world. Beautiful women, wealth, money, power, status, and looks. This man who has everything in the world is the public enemy of all men. This is really too unpleasant. I have always had a lot of opinions about him. I fully understand your cheap, fragile, sensitive, and jealous self-esteem. I have decided to join your rebels." Constantine spoke righteously, vomiting yellow bile from the corners of his mouth, and angrily staring and rebuking. Sure enough, after these words, Hal's fist stopped in the air, staring, and his angry face was frozen. He turned his head and looked at Barry. His eyes seemed to say, "Are you kidding me? He is not that hateful, John." "Oh, really? We need people like you." A low voice came out of Bruce's mouth. He just woke up and seemed to feel the joy and surprise of his companions. Bruce added, "Don't worry, I'm fine. It's just that my lower body cannot move, my eyes are blind, my internal organs are dislocated, and a few bones are broken." Chapter 211 No. Metropolis. Emperor Building. At 1400 hours, when the sun is at its strongest, the glass of the building is like fish scales, reflecting various psychedelic colors in a colorful way. It is like a huge parabola-like rainbow of colors, shining over the sky of this metropolis, bringing a psychedelic color scene to the metropolis. As time goes by, the sun slowly refracts and moves, and every moment the sky shows a unique color, magnificent and beautiful. The Emperor Building is 2,000 meters high and has 390 floors. There are not many floors, and each floor is 5 meters high. It is spacious and wide. Even on each floor, you can feel the grandeur of the entire building, the vast sense of space, the clouds that can be seen from the window, and the psychedelic color sky of the metropolis, which brings a visual impact and unparalleled tallness and grandeur. From the 380th floor onwards, ordinary people are prohibited from entering. The 381st floor is the Raven Magic Academy. Although it is called an academy, there are actually very few students. Not everyone is qualified to be a magician. On average, 1 out of every 300,000 people is a particularly bad magician. It takes 10 years of training to cast a lighting spell or a fireball spell. This kind of magician is not even as powerful as a pistol. Therefore, the magician army of Badi died very early due to the lack of magicians. Although the Magic Academy here is called the Academy, it actually only has Raven and a dozen magicians from the magic world, who have defected to Badi. Most of them are ordered by Badi to create various experiments combining magic and technology. It is also the command center of the entire Imperial building, and the Magic Circle, connecting various coordinate points in the world, and can be teleported to any location in the world. On the side of the 382nd floor is Pamela's Plant Kingdom Command Center, which controls all the plants in the Imperial building. She also studies Krypton plants, demon plants, agarus plants, ancient plants on Earth, and so on here. She cooperates with the demons of the Magic Academy to cultivate many plants with magic reactions. As for the upper, there will be people living there in the future. Until the 390th floor, the highest floor, next to Badi's residence, where he lived with Raven and Pamela every night. The 380th floor, this is the highest office, belonging to Badi, and it is also the boundary that cuts off anyone below who wants to go up. Here, you can see the undulating buildings of the entire metropolis from the floor to ceiling windows, shrouded in the colorful fantasy, beautiful and magnificent. Master, Constantine, who was chasing Bruce, has disappeared. The satellite last detected that Barry Allen left that Skeveril Island in Indonesia at a speed of 278 Mach. past Irian Island, and disappeared in Papua New Guinea. The satellite did not detect any of his whereabouts. Hera pushed open the door, wearing a professional suit, stepped in, tapped her fingers, and a huge map projection appeared in an instant. Barry was vaguely seen moving at super high speed in the ocean, and the snow-white waves he raised were chasing high behind him. Badi poured himself a glass of special flame vodka. The red flame-like liquid swayed in the transparent glass. He drank it gently, adjusting and amplifying his taste and smell. However, even so, this special flame vodka, with a 340-degree stimulating feeling like flame, still made Badi feel like drinking boiled water with some pepper. When he heard that Constantine was missing, Badi's face did not change. He just nodded slightly and confirmed the fact. Badi had very shallow feelings for this product that he had trained himself in the Magic Academy. In fact, for all the heroes or villains that Badi had recruited, Badi would not instill too much hope in them. He just used them as tools for fighting. They were all used by him to control, consume, and explore the power of the whole world. Success is good, but failure is also fine. Some of these famous heroes were even ruined by him, and they were not as useful as Mike, Leon and others who Badi had trained himself. A few years ago, he had not wanted to pay attention to these fly-like heroes. Since the life code was completely integrated into the cells and slowly stimulated the genes, Batman's eyes have always been on the Earth level, on the work of testing the Doomsday Cell, making himself stronger. If you want him to focus on a few heroes who are like drowning dogs to kill, it would be redundant. But it must be said that in this kind of dragnet, with the Earth being monitored by Batman's satellite, Batman can still jump around under the pursuit, which is indeed as smart as in the comics. He glanced at Barry and stared at Barry's blurry figure in the projection. From the beginning, he had a speed of 278 Mach. The name of the Flash is indeed well deserved. This speed is really shocking. No wonder he can travel through time and run everywhere. As for various enemies, Batman believes that the biggest threat is Barry, a speedster. Running to the past at will can easily lead to the birth of a different future. The worst thing is that, even if the speedster wants to recover, it will cause a chain reaction and he will never be able to restore the original future. We need to capture him. Speed Force is also needed by Badi. Badi took a sip of flaming vodka, his eyes left Barry's figure, and shook the fiery red liquid, which he drank up in one gulp. How is the latest experiment? In the 78,000th experiment, the destruction spores encountered a high temperature of more than 3 million degrees during the test, and they could no longer evolve. The experiment failed. Hera folded her hands lightly, with a sharp and neat expression between her eyebrows, and said, "Master, I think we are going in the wrong direction." Badi thought for a while, and discussed the experiment about Doomsday with Hera, but did not come up with any results. Finally, Badi said, "Transfer Lex Luthor to the Doomsday Plan." After transferring Lex Luthor to the Doomsday Plan, Badi selected two special operations teams to specifically restrain the fast-moving enemies, and immediately set out to support Mike and eliminate the Sea Lord Orm. Badi believed that his intentions were not difficult to guess. What he wanted was that even if Bruce guessed it, there was no way to stop it. Now his power and strength are not something that Bruce and the Flash can stop. If there are any accidents, Badi will naturally correct them. After dealing with all this, Antiope has been taken to the entire Imperial building by Lex Luthor. Antiope is the sister of Amazon Queen Hippolyta, representing the birth of Paradise Island and coming to the entire human world. She is also the aunt of Diana Prince, Wonder Woman. Chapter 212, Shocking Knowledge. Antiope was wearing a dark green wide cloak, revealing her slender and strong body on the left side. She had strong arms, healthy wheat-colored skin, a slender and beautiful figure with power, and wavy blonde hair that reached her shoulders. There was a strong and sonorous warrior spirit between her eyebrows, and she also had the atmosphere of a royal family. Humans are really a creative race. Antiope sighed. The extremely tall building of the Imperial building, the majestic momentum it displayed, the light reflecting the entire sky, and the fantasy colors it brought, all opened her eyes. Who would have thought that humans, who were originally thought to be in the Middle Ages, would develop a circuitous and different system, and scientific research has achieved everything for humans today. On the contrary, Paradise Island still seems to be in the Middle Ages. For thousands of years, there has been little progress or development of new magic systems. Then, she saw Badi coming out of the gate. He was tall and strong, and he looked gentle and elegant in a white windbreaker. His tough facial features, under the refraction of the faint light, made his eyes deep and charming. The image of Badi is undoubtedly very easy to make a woman like him. Even the Amazon warriors can't help but like Badi's appearance, the aura praised by the outside world, a great philanthropist, a scientist, leading the progress of mankind for decades, and a series of praises, plus what they see now, they like him. The two shook hands as usual, and greeted each other politely. When shaking hands, Badi's eyes were slightly gentle and smiling, but it can be felt that this Amazon warrior has the same fighting power as the advanced genetic warriors of Krypton. A powerful Amazon warrior. In addition to Luther, there were two other reporters, a man and a woman. The man was a little fat with a belly, and the woman was young, with sparkling eyes, following behind them to report. Badi's conversation with Antiope can be regarded as a pleasure. From some of Antiope's past jokes, he got a lot of information about Paradise Island. In his mind, he roughly outlined an isolated island with fierce female warriors, dense jungles, and Greek-style architecture. This Atomic Research Institute, Nuclear Fusion Simulation Institute, Electromagnetic Effect Research, Biology, Badi explained with a smile. These were all trivial things studied by humans, but the thick steel pipe-like equipment in the institute, advanced electronic instrument detection, and various instruments and equipment that ordinary people could use made Antiope amazed. Just relying on science, things that were hailed as miracles thousands of years ago, the rotation of the earth, gravity, the sun, energy, in ancient times, have always been called miracles, but now they are explained with scientific rationality. Various reasons made her amazed. Humans in her eyes, more and more important, and shocked. In fact, this is just real human research. Badi's research was not shown. This was enough to shock Antiope. Before she came out of Paradise Island, she thought the changes she saw were just houses and some flying vehicles, changes to facilitate travel, and even the appearance of mobile phones. She was surprised. Now she came to the most famous imperial building in the world and looked at the research institutes on the ground floor. After the explanation, she realized how serious the disconnection was for Paradise Island, to be closed off from the outside world. When Badi introduced to her the depth of human research, the weapons derived from it, atomic bombs, nuclear bombs, hydrogen bombs, and other weapons that were enough to blow up Paradise Island, Antiope was shocked. What a path has mankind developed in the past few thousand years. Although God said that he did not pay too much attention to you, you don't have to destroy yourself like this and create all kinds of powerful and outrageous weapons. This is already a power that is almost a miracle, and it is mastered by humans like this. If one day it is used by evil people and a few nuclear bombs are launched casually, it is enough to destroy tens of millions of lives. This is a destructive weapon. She couldn't help but feel numb in her heart and a little fortunate that at this time, Paradise Island was born and connected with the world. Otherwise, in a few decades, if Paradise Island was not born, it would be found and then wiped out, or it would be in a more difficult situation to survive. Until the end, after this introduction, Badi concluded from Antiope's subtle reaction that atomic bombs and nuclear bombs still have a strong deterrent effect on Paradise Island. And from the beginning, Badi shook hands with her and sensed that her strength was not much different from that of a high-level Kryptonian genetic warrior. Combined with the divine power or magic in their bodies, they had a certain suppression on the genetic constitution of Krypton. With only his own Kryptonian genetic warriors, one-on-one, they might not be Antiope's opponent. But Badi has 3 million Kryptonian genetic warriors. Paradise Island is not full of warriors like Antiope. Even if the most powerful Wonder Woman Diana is a little stronger than Antiope, it doesn't matter. I wonder if 100,000 Kryptonian genetic warriors can kill one of the 12 main gods of Greece. How powerful are the main gods of Greece? Such a powerful Amazon warrior can be molded out of mud. From mud to human. This is already the level of life and flesh that has been arranged into flesh at the fundamental atomic level, creating genetic information, forming genetic loading information, and stabilizing information. In an instant, the cells that had been developed for countless years and the evolution of countless years ended. From apes to humans, in their hands, it appeared in an instant. This is definitely a miracle, and it is indeed the power of the so-called gods. Badi silently thought in his heart, if he fought against this kind of god, what chance would he have? He would always focus on more powerful people. There was nothing on the earth that could threaten him. On Paradise Island, the Greek gods, the gods closest to the earth, came into his sight. Thank you, Mr. Badi, humans really opened my eyes. Antiope expressed her gratitude. It was worth the trip. She saw and understood the real situation of the Amazons. Humans, or they don't need their protection. She felt a little bitter and shocked. All along, the Amazons have placed themselves as the guardians of humans. Now they find that, even if Paradise Island opens the magic barrier, it can't withstand the continuous bombing of more than a dozen nuclear bombs, and will be destroyed into scorched earth. This made her unbalanced for a while. My niece, Diana, will represent Paradise Island in the future, and walk among humans. I will recommend her to visit the Imperial Building. I hope Mr. Badi can visit her and learn about humans, so that she won't think about sword fighting and killing all day long. Antiope sighed. Diana was the strongest warrior in their entire Paradise Island, and even he was not her opponent. Let her come and see how many nuclear bombs she can withstand. Badi naturally agreed. He had no unreasonable thoughts about Diana. It's just that Diana is a demigod with the blood of Zeus, who can measure the power of Greek gods. So far, this visit to the Imperial Building to learn about the greatest pioneer among humans has ended. After Antiope left, at this time, Hera warned Badi of the occurrence of abnormal fluctuations. Master, Barry Allen just started running in Papua New Guinea at 100 km per second, 300 Mach, and the speed is gradually increasing, 400 Mach, 500 Mach, 600 Mach, 800 Mach. In an instant, Barry felt the trembling of his body cells, the distortion of his soul, and time and space seemed to be pulling him back. The whole world seemed to be twisted into a vortex in front of his eyes, dizzy, blurry. Chapter 213 Confrontation. Badi's vision was hazy, the world was spinning, and in his eyes, the ceiling and the ground were twisted and connected into a plane. He was on the ground floor of the Emperor building, walking towards the building. The clean ground, where the light wall reflected the shadow of people, seemed to be mixed, twisted, and entangled with the huge, magnificent Emperor building. At this moment, Badi felt like the weakest human being, riding the bus of the earth, driving fiercely on the avenue of time, which made him have extremely severe motion sickness. The dizzy and unstable pituitary gland could not keep his body balanced. Bang! Badi suddenly stepped on the ground, his body slightly leaned forward, his cervical spine bent, staring at the ground. The dizziness continued. He was like a drunk, stepping forward suddenly to maintain his body balance. The smooth ground, that could reflect the shadow of people, was suddenly cracked like a mirror under Badi's foot, and the cracks expanded outward like a winding and twisted snake. His body, like a caged beast, exudes a suffocating, heavy breath, filling the air with danger and solidification. The air around him is so heavy that it becomes solid. Something seems to be pulling him out of here, pulling out this body of his soul, and the spirit begins to merge, deeply merging the physical genes of the soul. It is to pull out his own soul, his own will. It is to pull himself to walk on another road. Badi suddenly woke up from the dizziness, and every cell in his body began to release the power contained in it. The body's magnetic field suddenly erupted. The power connection between each cell progressed layer by layer, starting from the cell nucleus, running wildly, squeezing out the energy contained in the cell fluid, and under Badi's spiritual control, releasing a strong resistance. This is a resistance from the spirit, soul, and will. Boom! In an instant, waves arose without wind, and Badi's body gushed out a huge body magnetic field from all the pores, forming a huge force, suddenly pushing the surrounding air outward, wrinkling it, and then forming a loud explosion. Badi suddenly straightened up in the center of the explosion. His tall and majestic body stood tall and proud, towering above the earth. In the explosion of the invisible airwave, his windbreaker was surging wildly. His eyes shrank into a point, and in an instant, he used his soul and will to cut off the nameless pulling force. The pulling force that caused his soul To be dizzy and extremely uncomfortable was broken just like that. In Badi's eyes, this world was returning to normal in an instant, as if the feeling just now was a disgusting dizzy illusion, but his soul and will had felt that kind of pressure, pulling, dizziness, and extreme discomfort. In his heart, a terrifying anger rose directly. Hera. Where is Barry Allen? Badi growled coldly, his face was cold to the extreme. His body floated up from the cracked ground, his windbreaker fluttered and rolled, and then with a whoosh, his whole body pierced the sky in clouds, and disappeared here. Behind him, Luther, who was following, had his eyes widened when the first wave of Badi's body magnetic field burst out. He was hit by the majestic impact force, and was directly hit by a train. His whole body was blown away for more than 10 meters. His internal organs surged, and a mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth as a blood mist, rolling in the air, and falling to the ground. This was too sudden. He was closest to Badi, and suffered the most powerful wave. The magnetic field compressed the air shock wave, causing him to have no time to react. He fell to the ground, and before he fainted, he saw Badi like an angry god, his feet off the ground, and rushed into the sky. The crowd around who were watching Badi from afar were all shocked. The oncoming air waves and the flying hair could not stop them from staring at this sudden scene with dry eyes in shock. Am I dazzled? Am I dazzled? Mr. Badi seems to be flying. Wow, what's going on? Mr. Badi can fly. This is. Mr. Badi can fly. On the ground floor of the Emperor building, people who saw this scene screamed in surprise. Rio. A mountain range, far away from the ocean, the sky is clear and the white clouds are thin. The earth here is brown and yellow, with sparse green grass scattered all over. It is a desert with less water in the soil. There are scattered trees in the distance, growing tenaciously on this land with little water. Mike spent a lot of time to find this place and guide the Sea Lord Dom here. In fact, it doesn't take much effort to guide the Sea Lord Dom here. He is too arrogant and regards humans as beasts. In the hotel where he stayed, he has already toyed with 2 beautiful waitresses to death. He regards life as nothing, cruel and cold, and his hideousness is outrageous. After taking advantage of his arrogance and providing him with greater fun, and after giving away several lives for his cruel fun, he agreed to Mike's suggestion to go to his country, inspect it, have some fun, and see if it is suitable for cooperation and trade with Atlantis. Very easily, the Sea Lord Dom boarded the helicopter prepared by Mike. Landing here, a battle broke out. Not far from the battle, behind a hill, 2 people were hiding. A little further away, Victor prepared a vehicle to cooperate with the escape at any time. Hal and Bruce were lying in ambush behind the hill. Bruce's eyes are still blind now, but even so, it did not hinder his actions. When Barry entered the Speed Force time, in that time when 1 second seemed like several months, he performed surgery on Bruce. The nerve connection of the exoskeleton device is connected to Bruce's nerves throughout his body, and the light absorption image is formed into an image mode directly in Bruce's brain, forming a 3-dimensional image. As long as the light and shadow effect is not transmitted at a speed faster than the speed of light, even if he is blind, he can still clearly see the surrounding environment in his brain under the connection of the exoskeleton device. This is Bruce's masterpiece in the past few years. It is a close-fitting thin black tight-fitting nerve connection tights with sympathetic nerve reaction. In addition, there are black steel mechanical connection joints at the joints of the whole body. The mechanical skeleton that fits tightly on the chest can cooperate with the human body to exert more than 10 tons of power. Are you okay? Hal leaned on the hill. The black exoskeleton device and the close-fitting black sympathetic clothing were attached to the sand dune, and the black steel exoskeleton boots under his feet stepped out of a pit. Hal's eyes showed a little worry. Bruce was just asserted that his lower body would be paralyzed, but the next moment, he used Barry's ability to connect to the sympathetic nerves of the exoskeleton device he made, and forcibly stood up to fight. Although this kind of wisdom of preparing for a rainy day is worth celebrating, and seeing Bruce standing up is also worth celebrating, but Bruce has already overdrawn his life, and the next plan is already playing with fire. If they are not careful, their lives that are fleeing one after another will really perish. It's okay, my body is too weak. Without the support of money and technology, it is difficult to form an effective combat force. Bruce said in a low voice. I need a stronger body to fight against them. Chapter 214 Why? Papua New Guinea is mostly plains and lowlands, rich in forest resources, and tropical virgin forests cover about 77% of the country's land area. Ligao Plain. From a high altitude, it looks like a ship sailing in the ocean, rippling waves on the left, right and behind. The entire plain ocean is torn into snow-white airwaves by him. The speed of more than 800 Mach is no longer acceptable to the human eye. The blurred figure of the Flash, along with the surrounding yellow ox, burst out with a huge inertia that is enough to travel through the space-time continuum. Suddenly, Barry's speed stagnated, and the yellow ox on his body seemed to struggle in a mess. His steps staggered, and his whole body was thrown by inertia, and thrown on the plain, continuously raising rolling sand and dust, rolling hundreds of meters on the plain, continuously overturning the pencil-like cypress trees, and finally hitting a cypress tree that was 15 meters high. Press. The huge force bent the trunk of the cypress tree directly. At the bend, the bark had been cracked, revealing the trunk flesh inside, oozing milky white sap, and gradually bending and squeezing from the inside. The cypress tree supported Barry's body, and the angle of the sharp bend seemed to be about to bounce Barry back again. Crack. The tall cypress tree was not able to bounce Barry back in the end, but was directly crushed by Barry. The trunk broke, fell to the ground, and raised a cloud of dust. Barry groaned several times with pain all over his body, his internal organs rolled, and he felt nauseous, making him want to vomit and blush. His muscles were cramping and trembling, and the bone marrow deep in his bones seemed to be sore, making him too lazy to get up. Yellow arcs flickered on his body, faintly pulling and scratching his skin. The speed of more than 800 Mach, 272,240 meters per second, brought inertia. If it weren't for the speed force that was always entangled and protecting him, at this speed, it would have been decomposed into molecules long ago. Barry climbed up from the fallen cypress tree, gasping for air, forcibly suppressing the feeling of rolling and nausea, swallowing several mouthfuls of air roughly, his chest heaving constantly, his hands and feet oozing soreness from the bone marrow, his eyes filled with panic and fear, his head lowered, looking at his open hands. Why is there no way to go back to the past? Yellow arcs of electricity flashed rapidly on his hands again. His face was incredulous, his eyes widened with horror. This kind of thing has never happened in his memory. The greatness of the speed force is something that no one can compete with. This is an external manifestation of time, reflected in speed, connecting the entire universe. The entire universe is under the cover of the speed force. Barry once even went deep into the speed force and witnessed the separation of the strong interaction force from the heat death of the Big Bang, the formation of protons and neutrons and their antiparticles, the stabilization of bosons, neutrinos, electrons, quarks and gluons, and the birth of the concept of time at the initial moment. The superluminal speed, the speed force energy, and the speed force wall were formed by the materialization of time. The speed force wall has firmly penetrated into every part of the universe, every moving particle, concept formation, and even every human thought, accompanied by thoughts, has the concept of the passage of time. No one can be unaffected by the shape of time. As long as he goes back to the past, and prevents the birth of Bamulodi, prevents his arrival, and prevents him from becoming the master of Metropolis, the world will return to its original state, following the correct history of the birth of many superheroes. Instead of now, whether it is superheroes or supervillains, most of them have been killed by Bamulodi without authorization, twisting their minds, changing the whole world, and heading towards Bamulodi's world. He is not affected by the time. Barry stared with horrified eyes. The arcs in his eyes were pulsating wildly. His mind was accelerated to the crazy degree that he thought of 1 year and 1 second in the outside world, and he came to a horrifying conclusion. Bamulodi was not affected by the time of this world. He was not from this world, not from this universe, not a so-called Kryptonian. Barry felt vaguely that he needed Bamulodi's cooperation to travel through time, and he needed his willingness to pull out his nail and put it on other time roads so that he could travel through time and return to the past. In other words, Bamulodi stabilized this universe by himself. Maybe he didn't know it, but he did have a very special place, stabilizing time and the entire universe. For reasons unknown to Barry and Bart, he stabilized this universe, making it impossible for the entire universe to pierce through and return to the past and future. If this universe is described as a page of paper in a comic, then Bart is a nail. The snail nailed this page of paper to the wall, firmly, and could not move. How is this possible? Barry took a breath of cold air, his body trembled a little, and his eyes flashed with disbelief. Even if Bamuloda's power could blow up the earth, it could not stop the operation of the entire universe. This was too terrifying. It was hard to accept. What kind of power could affect the operation of the universe and keep it running stably with one's own strength? At this time, a huge airwave tore through the sky. A white figure, dragging a long white-tail sonic boom cloud, descended violently in the sky. The white figure was high above, like a fighter jet sprinting, and it dived directly towards Barry's position. The yellow arc on Barry's body suddenly flashed, and his eyes, which were shaking with arcs, were squinted with horror, and fled from his original position, hundreds of meters away. Hundreds of meters away, he still felt the movement under his feet, and suddenly his feet were empty. In the sky, the white figure fell violently. Boom. The rocks flew up suddenly where it fell, blowing away the nearby cypress trees. The huge airwaves rolled along the air, sweeping through the forest like a Force 20 typhoon, bending the trees in the forest, surprising countless birds to fly up. The ground suddenly dropped below the horizon, and suddenly stopped. Within a radius of 10,000 meters, a huge round pit was formed, hundreds of meters deep, and the cracks kept crawling and cracking. The huge force impacted the entire island, causing violent ups and downs in the city 100 miles away. People were shaking in fear, and buildings collapsed and fell. The impact force was transmitted far to the Atlantic coastline, from the ground to the ocean, causing huge waves and tidal reactions, and waves kept surging on the sea surface, preparing to form a tsunami. The dust rolled up wildly in the next moment, and began to spread, and cover Barry and Badi. In the dust that filled the sky, a figure stood tall and towering, as if standing on the horizon of the earth, crushing the earth. Even though Barry was standing higher than the figure, enough to look down at him, he could still feel the awe-inspiring aura emanating from that figure, which was pressing down on the entire earth, crushing his will, suffocating his heartbeat, and making it difficult for him to match it. Chapter 215 Kneel Down. Barry looked at the figure in the dust, and took a step back. His body subconsciously shrank back for a moment, and his heart trembled with fear. This was his first time facing Badi, a villain who was more brutal and clever than any other villain. He chased them away like dogs, and contemptuously chased him away for several years. The figure in the dust seemed to make him see the bloodthirsty and cruel breath of the beasts from ancient times, trampling the earth, emitting an unparalleled heavy pressure, squeezing the air and the earth. Every particle seemed to be groaning under him, crushed in pain. The whole earth was groaning and wailing under his feet. Under his feet, the cracked ground was a brutal throne made of millions of corpses. Damn it. Barry bit the tip of his tongue. The pain and the salty taste filled his taste buds, recovering from the strong pressure. The pressure was substantial and unbelievable. His heart was beating rapidly to suppress the fear, and his blood seemed to solidify, and his hands and feet were as stiff as ice. But in his memory, the things he had experienced were restored in Barry's brain. The yellow arc flickered faintly under his feet, surged up, and gave him deep support, allowing him to still stand here, his eyes tightly facing Badi in horror. The next moment, the dust in the sky was violently torn and exploded. Badi's face was expressionless, his eyes were cold, and he stood on the ground, as if he was on the highest peak, and he could crush everything with just one step. His body was no longer in control, no longer controlling the convergence of the magnetic field of the cell strength. A strong man with the power to blow up a planet. The magnetic field of every cell in his body was incredibly strong. This amazing degree, when he is not under control, ordinary people can be affected by him in the nerves, endocrine, sensory organs, cardiovascular, blood, digestion, muscles, excretion, breathing, skin, bones, etc., accelerating or suppressing, vision, hearing, and even prone to hallucinations. In fact, in front of him, ordinary people can't lift their heads, and they are not qualified to look up at him. This is the difference in the essence of life. He is just a planet-level powerhouse. The magnetic field reaction emitted is enough to crush the internal organs of an ordinary person, causing ordinary people to lack oxygen, blood stagnation, and brain explosion and death. This is the pressure from a planet-level powerhouse. This pressure, when released without Badi's control, vibrates and waves towards the vibrating air, vibrating with a terrifying effect. Around him, under the sunlight, the magnetic field is distorted, and the air and light are constantly distorted, as if the space is broken, and the ground is sinking deeper, and large pieces of stone are weightless and rising, and then shattering. Around him, a terrifying scene is created. He is a supermassive planet. The gravitational force that erupts, and the magnetic field of his body are like a singularity born from the destruction of a terrifying planet. It is attracting its own gravity, attracting, distorting everything, and destroying everything nearby. The angry Badi is terrifying. There is no way to negotiate, no way to stop it. Waves of huge pressure fields rolled around violently, and a huge circle appeared in the sky, with white clouds drifting far away. The air is trembling. The earth is wailing. The light around him is distorted and attracted. He is like a terrifying master of darkness, like a moving black hole, swallowing and destroying everything. Horror. Barry took a step back with a horrified look on his face. The huge pressure pressed towards him, forming waves of air, rushing towards his face and suffocating him. In an instant, Barry's nose stopped breathing subconsciously, and his eyes looked at Badi in horror. It was like the master of gods and demons descending, and it was like the figure in the center of a black hole twisting everything. The huge pressure field was suffocating his heart, his blood stagnating, and his thoughts almost stagnating. The yellow arcs on his body reacted rapidly and violently, resisting and resonating to offset this huge pressure. You are not from this universe. You are not a Kryptonian. Where did you come from? Barry's face was horrified, his eyes shrank, and his whole body was wrapped in yellow arcs. The powerful pressure field pressed towards him like a hurricane, and the arcs on his body moved faster and faster. This was simply a shocking scene, a scene where one person could cause the destruction of the world. This terrifying power, the magnetic field reaction released, made Barry feel horrified and shocked. Badi's white windbreaker fluttered in the windless air, the light twisted around him, the rocks rose and shattered under his feet. His majestic body stepped on the sky, on the earth, on the lifeline of the planet, making the whole world wail. Badi gently raised his right foot, kneeled down. His face was expressionless, his eyes were cold, and he looked at the world, as if from the sky, from the depths of the universe, like a giant, looking down on the whole earth, looking down on Barry, looking down on the Flash. The Flash really angered Badi. No one can change his past, whether it is pain, or misery, happiness, or sadness. He endured all the painful past, all the sad past, and also endured happiness, smiles, and many pasts. They are the most precious past, which made him who he is now. How can he allow anyone to change the self he likes now? The whole world, under Badi's feet, trembled under his cold eyes and ruthless gaze. The ground began to become restless. The forest, which had long been pressed down by the pressure of Badi, rustled continuously, like a helpless child crying. The Flash's face changed, and he shouted in disbelief and horror, "Bamulodi, what do you want to do?" Barry couldn't imagine that the entire island of New Guinea has an area of about 786,000 square kilometers, the second largest island in the world, with a population of about 12 million. And Bamulodi meant that he could lift his foot and drop it, destroying the entire New Guinea island and 12 million people. Yes, without any doubt, Barry felt that the cold eyes of the man in front of him meant this irresistible tyranny and brutality. As long as he didn't kneel down and surrender, one kick would bury 12 million people, the world's second largest island would disappear, and the entire Pacific Ocean would trigger a huge super tsunami, which would submerge Indonesia, Australia, the New Hebrides, the Solomon Islands, the Philippines, and other nearby coastlines. All nearby coastlines would be submerged by this huge tsunami, causing far more than 12 million deaths. And all this was just because of Badi's kick. 3. You can't do this. We know you won't hurt civilians. 2. You just want them to believe in you. You won't hurt them. You need them to set off your glory. 1. They will be the people you rule in the future. Badi's face was expressionless. His eyes were cold. A truly destructive force stepped down. The whole world was quiet. Chapter 216. Flash. You're done. New Guinea Island ushered in the end of the world. Badi stepped down. The world was as silent as death, without any sound or color. However, in the next moment, a violent reaction occurred. Deep below the island, several thousand meters, the mantle connected to the continental plate of the earth was subjected to violent shock vibrations. Passing through the crust, the rock layers supporting the continent from sedimentary rocks, igneous rocks and metamorphic rocks, etc., transmitted the destructive force impact. From the mantle receiving the impact, the upper mantle layer composed of crystalline minerals such as olivine, amphibole, amphibolite aluminum porphyroxene, plagioclase, mantle rock, etc., began to be under pressure, squeezed and broken, and a large area of the mantle began to shift and sink. The entire New Guinea Island suddenly paused. It sank dozens of meters directly from the horizontal line. The seawater at the coast swayed far away crazily. When it came back, it would echo and form a huge tsunami to pounce on it. As the large-scale mantle began to shift and sink, New Guinea Island began to tear apart from the feet of Badi, spreading a huge crack, as if a huge crack like an abyss tore apart this island of about 780,000 kilometers. The entire island was like porcelain, and the cracks quickly spread, passing through Chimbu, East New Britain, East Sepik, Eastern Highlands, Enga, Gulf, Madang, Manus, Mean Bay, Morobe, New Ireland, North Solomon, Southern Highlands, West New Britain, West Sepik, Western Highlands, Hela, Jiwaka, every city province. The huge crack that came from the doomsday in the distance burst into the ground like a flash of lightning, and instantly swallowed up the people who were quietly living, working, and enjoying life. On the highway, a huge abyss suddenly appeared. Without any psychological preparation, cars screamed in fear, and suddenly flew up to the sky for dozens of meters as if weightless, and then fell down continuously, piercing the piercing sound of horns, and fell directly into the dark crack. The office workers in the high-rise building suddenly paused, and everyone lost weight and flew up, sticking to the ceiling. Their internal organs rolled, dizzy, and suddenly fell down. The building suddenly split in half, and a huge dark crack appeared in the middle. The building collapsed, and fell into the dark crack in the center. There were continuous screams of fear, howling in the dark crack. There were women at home who suddenly fell into the crack in the dark, and the lower level plates tore and moved, and began to sink. The seawater rushed up from the land, and the city and the high-rise buildings suddenly surged and rushed, washing the entire city. Help. Son, my son. Ah, my legs, my legs. The end is coming. Save me, save me. In an instant, the sky collapsed, the earth shook, the city was torn apart, the sea surged, and 12 million people on the island screamed and screamed, and the sound of the gathering, accompanied by the rumbling and tearing of the island's underground plates, wailed the entire Atlantic Ocean. Not only that, this time the continental plate and the upper mantle broke. The sinking of New Guinea Island also caused small-scale earthquakes around the world, active volcanic eruptions, glaciers shook and melted, and the sea level rose, causing abnormalities on the entire Earth. My God, how can it cause global shocks and vibrations of the Earth's continental plates? What on earth is going on? The mantle plate of the island of New Guinea broke, and more than 12 million people on it will be drowned. What is going on? Is this world crazy? The end of the world suddenly came down. Why is it like this? There is not even a single sign. The United States, Britain, Russia, the big countries in Asia, all countries that have the ability to send satellites into orbit, felt the ground shaking at the same time, and saw this scene through the satellite. The sinking of the world's second largest island caused a chain reaction that made the entire Earth fearful, terrified, and unbearable. A huge tsunami over 700 meters high has begun to form, rushing towards the surrounding Indonesia, Australia, the New Hebrides, the Solomon Islands, the Philippines, the Hawaiian Islands, and all places near the coastline, causing a doomsday scene that will cause more than 50 million to 100 million deaths. The entire Pacific Ocean will be terrified by that tsunami, and everything nearby will face the annihilation of the ocean. Bamulodi. The Flash twisted his face, staring at Badi with hatred and anger in his eyes, his heart surging violently, and anger surged from every blood vessel and aorta. Under the flashing of yellow arcs, even his face was covered with hideous and angry arcs. The Flash was furious to the extreme. It was because he knew how much disaster Badi's kick had caused, causing the death of tens of millions of people, that he was so angry that his blood was about to boil. The yellow arc of electricity kept rising up from his body in anger. As the cracks on the ground became more and more serious and began to tilt, his anger became more violent, and his face was distorted in the flash of the arc. However, he did not attack Badi, but with a flash of lightning, he ran towards the nearest city along the cracks, leaving a huge airflow impact, flying towards Badi's figure. Badi's face was indifferent, and his heart was not fluctuating. His feet left the ground, floated, and flew up to the sky. He watched from a distance as a golden light flashed straight into the distance, blowing up a huge airflow. Hera, start calculating the speed of the Flash, and conduct behavioral pattern deduction and action model deduction. Badi's figure was tall and majestic, looking down in the sky, cold and ruthless, like a ruthless god. Underground, a golden light flickered and swayed on the cracked island. Every time, it ran towards the Australian interior with several people hanging on it, leaving civilians, and then ran back. The continuous golden light flowed out golden lines in front of Beri's eyes. The entire New Guinea island, which was being destroyed and sinking, flowed under the golden lines of hope. Beri could tell with his supervision and his brain that at this moment, the speed of the Flash had exceeded Mach 1200. It was a terrifying speed. Beri became the Flash and gained the speed force. It only took about a day for him to reach a speed of Mach 1200. As he ran faster, his speed increased linearly. This speed that transcends time and the world, the speed force, is extraordinary. Once caught in this pursuit of the Flash, there will be no end. 70 trillion simulations completed. Speed 1724 Mach. Behavior simulation completed. Action model established. In the sky, Badi was floating like a god, watching the end of the world with cold eyes, his windbreaker fluttering. His eyes flashed coldly. Flash, you're done. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217 New Guinea Island, the cracked island, split into countless pieces, is sinking. Tall buildings are collapsing. Seawater is surging up, impacting the entire destroyed city, and in an instant, the wailing of millions of people rang out, causing Beri to feel heartbroken and suffocated. A golden flash kept shuttling back and forth, taking away civilians, and implicating the high-ranking Badi. The golden arc in the eyes seemed to have become a big net to salvage the fish in this doomsday scene. Even the Flash didn't know how many people he had saved. In a short period of time, the New Guinea island cracked. The plates underneath were tearing apart, causing a major earthquake on the island, and the seawater surged into the Fan City, wreaking havoc in the city. The Flash was running on the cracked ground, getting faster and faster, with a yellow arc, pulling out a distant after-image current, running on the water, on the broken buildings, on the cracked and shattered, and on the flying stones. He saved lawyers, policemen, criminals, cleaners, gardeners, politicians, businessmen, men, women, children, and all other human beings, without distinguishing which ones needed to be saved. Because all human beings were within his scope of rescue. Even people who were robbing and committing crimes were taken away by him in an instant and placed on another land. The situation was so urgent that there was no way to distinguish it. In this doomsday-like city, he could only flash yellow arcs, run faster, bring out golden light, bring hope to the people here, and save lives here. Just as he was holding two children in his left and right hands who were subconsciously afraid and holding his arms tightly, and three women were hanging on his back, wrapping them with super speed. He also picked up a man in a leather suit and hung him in front of his chest and instantly ran to other parts of the Australian inland, put them down, and ran back again. The whole world, in his gradually increasing super speed, in his eyes, seemed to be saved slowly and sluggishly. Just as he saved 4,823,911 people. Maybe he didn't count them carefully, but it was indeed this number. When he came to the side of the next ragged homeless man, bang, the whole sky suddenly exploded. At the same time, Badi in the sky, his eyes flashed coldly, and a huge sonic boom cloud burst out in the sky. His tall body dived down, and in an instant, it rubbed out a fiery red-hot temperature, burning his forehead that was diving down, and the black hair that was blown back by the airflow, completely showing his strong face with a straight nose and a wide forehead, like a god rushing down. He had arrived earlier than the Flash, and after 70 trillion times of deduction, he completely deduced the speed and behavior model of the Flash. There was no mistake. The Flash and Badi seemed to have arrived at the side of this ragged homeless man at the same time and faced each other. The gravel on the ground splashed wildly. The ragged tramp directly bore the impact of Badi's swooping down and rushed over. In an instant, he flew up, his internal organs burst, and the whole person became muddy and limp. A big hand, like a python coming out of a cave, opened its tiger's mouth, and the white palm stretched out with a hot red light from the intense friction, and grabbed the Flash who was coming here, clamped his neck tightly, and lifted him up. The coordination was perfect, without any calculation errors. Through the previous rescue data of 4,823,91 people, the Flash's action mode and Badi's own maximum speed burst were obtained. In an instant, the Flash was grabbed by the neck by Badi and lifted up. The Flash's eyes shrank in horror. He had long been unable to take care of Bamulodi while rescuing civilians. His behavior had become more single-minded and faster. No one could catch up with his speed. His speed would get faster and faster. However, Badi suddenly appeared in front of him, frightening him so much that his heart tightened and his breath choked. For a moment, he felt his neck suddenly tightened, and his feet floated off the ground. "I got you." Badi's face was cold. He pinched the Flash's neck with one hand, and lifted him up with one hand. The Flash's eyes were instantly filled with red, and the red veins on the whites of his eyes spread up. He was pinched by Badi, and suffocated in pain. The sun slanted on the Flash's back, covering Badi's cold face. Under the Flash's high and downward gaze, in the shadowed face, he was like a cruel demon of fear, lifting him up and tearing him apart, causing a huge fear to suddenly rise in his heart, and his hands and feet trembled. Crazy yellow arcs of electricity instantly emerged from the Flash's body. Ah! The Flash tore in pain and roared in a low voice as his neck was pinched. The yellow arc of electricity instantly expanded, covering Badi with it. His figure began to move frequently under the frequent movement of the yellow arc, and Badi's big hand. Speed force vibration. Vibration that can penetrate all matter, passing through. With trembling in his heart, he vibrated countless yellow arcs, trying to shake out his claws, because there are still millions of people waiting for him to save them. He bared his teeth, and roared in pain. However, Badi just puffed up his cheeks slightly, and a strong cold current blew towards the legs of the Flash. The vibration of the speed force arc began to slow down in an instant, and when it collided with a low temperature of more than -100 degrees, inertia appeared. The yellow arc became more and more sluggish, unwillingly slowly pulling the body of the Flash, no longer high frequency. In the end, it was as if Badi blew a breath and blew away the high frequency yellow arc, and then the low temperature of more than -100 degrees covered the legs of the Flash. In an instant, the legs of the Flash were frozen, and the cold air penetrated into the surface of the thigh, the fibers, the muscles, and the cells, freezing all the cells to death, and went straight into the thigh bones. The bones began to become brittle, and the cold air went straight to the lowest bone marrow. His legs instantly turned crystal clear, cold white, and the cold air was spreading. Bang! As if they were fragile porcelain, the Flash's legs were blown to pieces by Badi. Chunks of frozen ice fell from the Flash's legs and reached the roots. His legs completely disappeared, and only the roots were frozen and dangling. Badi was cold and ruthless. The shattered extreme cold air around him spread and rose. He bathed in the icy field and became a ruthless frozen demon. His big hand pinched the Flash's fingers and exerted a little force, and it had already sunk deeply into the flesh of his neck. Ah! The Flash wailed in pain, and his figure became clear again, no longer blurred. The yellow arcs on his body sizzled and wailed unwillingly and disappeared. Under the sunlight, he looked in a terrifying situation. His legs had been frozen, his face was pinched red, his tongue began to stick out, the whites of his eyes bulged out hideously, and the terrifying red veins made his entire eyes seem to be about to burst out. Do you want to travel through time again? I'm sorry, please save them. Chapter 218. No idea. Badi was startled, and the hand that was pinching the Flash's neck loosened a little, which allowed the Flash to take a breath, coughing non-stop, breathing oxygen. Should we say that a superhero is worthy of being a superhero? In this situation, when his own life and death are in danger, he is still worried about saving the ordinary people who are implicated. No wonder the Flash is loved by so many people. That pure and innocent heart is worthy of being the conscience of the Justice League. It's just a little stupid. Badi turned the Flash's body around, pinched the back of his neck with his big hand, and enveloped himself and him with his body magnetic field. He flew into the sky, taking the Flash to the sky, and suspended in the sky. Looking down from the sky, the island of New Guinea has been torn into pieces, and the seawater surged up from the cracks, washing away the humans on the entire island. The humans floated and sank like ants in the rapids, calling for help in fear, and the shrill voice disappeared with the rumble of the sea current. The island is gradually sinking. The tsunami outside is gradually forming, rushing towards the entire island of New Guinea. The Flash was held in the air by Betrayal, who was holding him by the back of his neck. He looked at the doomsday scene below, where humans were howling and struggling to survive in agony. Save them. You have the ability. The Flash gritted his teeth, clenched his fists tightly, and said with a pain in his heart, save them. You can gain international fame and become a hero of the whole world. This will make your road to conquest smoother, and people will love you more. Do you think it was me who caused them to be like this? Batel glanced at the Flash's painful face indifferently, and then looked at the ground again. Humans are like ants, being impacted by the surging ocean, constantly impacted, struggling in the ocean current, and sinking. In the distance, the tsunami rose hundreds of meters high, surging the blue ocean. In this doomsday scene that destroyed the world, humans are really as weak and powerless as ants. The Flash's face was filled with regret and pain, and his lips trembled. If I hadn't been so eager to run back to the past and change the past, Bamulodi wouldn't have wanted to catch me so intensely, causing the sinking of New Guinea Island and the endangerment of tens of millions of human lives. All this, it's me, Badi said coldly. He could choose to chase the Flash, or choose a fierce battle to defeat the Flash. But he didn't. He chose the simplest method, and without any surprise, the Flash was strangled by the neck and lifted up in his hand. He took the most extreme method to catch the Flash and destroyed tens of millions of lives. Have you ever thought about what will happen to the more than 4 million people you saved and placed them in the city of Australia? Badi suddenly said again. The Flash was startled. This was not difficult to imagine. Australia has only 24.13 million people. As the tsunami breaks out, Australia will focus on the coastline and rescue efforts, which is expected to result in the loss of about 3 million lives on the mainland. This will plunge the entire Australian Federation into a local crisis. Finance, food, refugee resettlement, and everything else will be prioritized over local people. Do you think this is right? Badi said indifferently. The Flash closed his lips tightly and said nothing. His body began to tremble faintly, and his body without legs tensed up. The sudden arrival of more than 4 million people will increase Australia's disaster. No country dares to easily rescue more than 4 million disaster victims. Do you know what will happen to more than 4 million people in order to survive? Will human nature struggle and do anything for survival? This is far darker than you can imagine. Cannibalism will even be common. 20 million people are spread across Australia, and the regular military force is less than 300,000. Plus the need to resist the attack of the tsunami, there is no way to take care of more than 4 million refugees. In the end, these more than 4 million people will be imprisoned in a chaotic city, in the city where you placed the refugees. The original residents of that city had a total of 1.5 million. They were originally safe, and the tsunami could not reach them. Now, everything has been destroyed by you, and everything has been destroyed by the refugees. Tell me, these 1.5 million people who were originally safe, peaceful, and had no dangerous days are now afraid and panicked, torn apart by refugees, raped, plundered, dead, and fearful. Who brought them? Even this country will start killing, because of these 4 million people. If they suppress it forcefully, they can only suppress it with blood. Badi said lightly. He had already said it very tactfully, and did not directly mention the bloodiest possibility. Australia may even fall directly into the flames of war, and destroy this country with a population of 24.13 million. There will be countries in the world condemning Australia's handling of refugees, and then the powerful countries will use the excuse of disaster relief to insert international humanitarianism into Australia. This will lead to the possibility that Australia will be eaten up, everything. All these disasters may be caused by more than 4 million refugees, causing a country with a population of 24.13 million to fall into division and disaster. Originally, even if it was a super huge tsunami, even if it lost 3 million Australian residents, the entire country could still be maintained and kept intact. The more than 4 million victims rescued by the Flash were too many. In an instant, it was enough to kill a city and cause riots in a city. In addition, the tsunami was huge, and there was no way to withdraw troops to control it. Australia is over. Of course, this is only the final result. However, the best result is that troops from multiple countries are stationed in Australia, losing national rights. Superheroes, in Badi's eyes, are just reckless people. Just having a flash of light and saving people. That moment of light makes people feel that heroes are great and countless people yearn for them. What is truly great is the government that can give ordinary people a peaceful living environment, a stable, calm, and secure environment. What is truly great is the team formed by humans. This kind of hero who is beyond the ability of ordinary people, without any funds, any follow-up ideas, and any follow-up plans, exudes his own brilliance, saves more than 4 million people, and then destroys the peaceful life of 1.5 million people in a city. You save some people, and bring disaster to others. Is it worth it? Badi asked indifferently. The Flash's body was shaking, his fists were clenched. His nails dug deeply into the palms of his hands, and he said in pain, all this, you should have thought about it. The mind under the Speed Force has enough time to think about all the consequences. Do you think you are a hero? Even until the end, you still miss saving ordinary people. Badi looked at the trembling Flash with pity eyes. Chapter 219 Aggressive. It's because of me that their homes were destroyed. I never thought of bringing disaster to others. I can only do more in the future and try my best to compensate and protect them. The Flash shivered in the cold wind with a look of grief on his face. He clenched his fists and inserted his fingertips into his palms, with blood flowing down. Every time he saw people who suffered from disasters because of his involvement, he felt uncomfortable and sad. He couldn't ignore those who needed help. Then why don't you kneel down? Badi suddenly said. Before he crushed the island of New Guinea with his foot, he had already ordered him to surrender and kneel down. But he didn't. If he was really so kind and well-intentioned, why didn't he kneel down? Kneel down and surrender, and you can prevent the death of tens of millions of people. You are not really that kind, Flash. You just follow your inner heroic desire, follow your inner desire to save others, and get the pleasure of pitying the suffering of the world. Saving people can make your heart happy in the bitterness. Badi's tone was slow and stimulating, just like Badi himself. Other people's beliefs and fanatical eyes made him enjoy and feel happy. He enjoyed all the beliefs and fanatical eyes from a high position, and they all made Badi feel happy. The Flash too followed his inner pleasure. Badi's words stimulated the Flash's heart, causing his body to tremble subconsciously, his pupils to dilate in fear, and his body, without legs, subconsciously wanted to curl up in fear, escaping from the outside world. No. I just, don't say you just didn't expect me to be so cruel. I didn't expect that I would really dare to destroy tens of millions of lives. No. The Flash curled up in Badi's hands, holding his arms tightly with both hands, hesitating. tears dripping from his pupils full of regret, remorse, blowing away in the cold wind and being torn apart by the air currents. The result of the matter, in the end, nothing has changed. If I had knelt down and surrendered at the beginning, then there would not be tens of millions of deaths, New Guinea Island would not be trampled by Bamilodi, that tsunami would not be formed, and Australia would not be trapped in the dilemma of receiving more than 4 million refugees, causing the country to cease to exist. All of this can be avoided by just kneeling down and surrendering. However, in the end, the Flash chose to continue to fight against Badi. This kind of struggle is undoubtedly worthy of praise, because once you surrender to evil and set a precedent, there will always be the next surrender, and there will be endless surrender to darkness. Just as superheroes don't kill people, Flash doesn't kill people. Killing people would mean losing the principles he has always adhered to in his heart. In the cold wind, the windbreaker rustled. Badi pinched the Flash's neck, his eyes staring at the back of his head mercilessly. The Flash was in his hand, curled up in pain, curled up. In fact, you don't need to blame yourself for all these evil deeds. It's me. Badi grinned behind the Flash. The sun passed through his smile. His smile was unusually sunny and weird. The weird thing was that there was no smile in his eyes, only ruthless coldness. At this moment, he was like a huge demon god of shadow, grinning, showing his white teeth behind the Flash, hiding endless conspiracies, shrouding the Flash. If it weren't for making the Flash more condemned by his conscience, Badi wouldn't say so much nonsense. In Hera's record database, Badi had been speculating with Hera, calculating the psychology of anyone around him, and updating it according to the people he saw. He understood the behavioral patterns, psychological patterns, and anyone to the extreme, and used them effectively to the extreme. When needed, he would naturally use them to the extreme. Sure enough, the Flash did not feel relieved because of Badi's words. Instead, he inserted his nails into the flesh of his arm, drawing painful blood. He gritted his teeth, and his tense muscles kept trembling. He was afraid, regretful, and painful. Badi's smile was almost to his ears, and he showed a huge grin. The cold look in his eyes flickered and fluctuated. Traveling through time. He did not intend to use traveling through time to plan for his own conquest, because it was meaningless, and it would make time more chaotic, change too much, and even lead to his previous efforts being wasted. The only value of the Flash was Badi, and there were still people who loved him deeply, waiting for him to save them in pain. It is to travel through time and save the huge monster-like figure swaying in pain in the flames of the night. It is the figure that could not bear the huge pain and finally exploded. He needs to save it. There is no comparison between a million people and a person who loves him deeply. Badi chose the person who loves him deeply. Then, Flash, you must be used by me. I have money, power, status, and I'm the uncrowned king of as many as 10 developed countries. The king of the country of Bamilodi. I have food and troops. I can save Australia and more than 4 million refugees. I can provide food, places, and aid to save all the people affected by the tsunami around the Atlantic. It's just, I need you to accompany me through time, go back to the past, and save one person. Badi said. His tone was a little relaxed for the first time, and it didn't seem cold and aggressive. The Flash has ordinary people he wants to save, and Badi also has people he wants to save. If you don't cooperate, then please watch tens of millions of people die. I promise you. Without hesitation, the Flash answered quickly, his fingers inserted more tightly into the flesh of his arm, and suddenly a little light rose in his dark pupils. As long as there is a little hope, anyone will hold on to it tightly. Not to mention that they have fallen deeply into the abyss of self-blame and despair, and were led by Badi to condemn their emotions in their hearts. Okay, thank you. Badi's mouth was outlined with a smile, and in his heart, he let go of a little bit of coldness and tension, and breathed a sigh of relief. This time, there was no coldness or evil in his smile, and it was purely under the sunlight, emitting a bright radiance, which was extremely comfortable. His expression turned gentle, looking at the painful Flash. Subconsciously, he said, "Do you know the difference between me and you? When you arrest criminals, you think you are not qualified to deprive a person of his life, and you don't kill them, and let the law decide. And I am the one who created the law and killed them." Chapter 220 The Death of Batman. Batman and Mike fought closely, entangled together, like two snakes on the ground, twisting, jointing, grounding, rolling, attacking non-stop, both trying to control each other, rolling and splashing dry mud, splashing everywhere. In the constant attack and entanglement. Suddenly, the next moment, the two heads hit each other heavily, bleeding. It only took a few seconds to decide the winner. Batman's hand fell heavily on the dry mud, his body softened, and he was silent. Mike, who was entangled with him, also lay on the side, his face twisted, his eyes closed, struggling painfully. Damn it. Bruce. Hal gritted his teeth, his eyes staring with unbearable pain, sweat oozing out of the radiation grenade tightly held in his hand, and his body felt suffocated and weak when he saw Bruce silent. Although Bruce had told him that this moment would happen, it was still hard for him to accept it. He felt like he was suffocating. Bruce's body was lying in front of him. Damn it. At least he got the body back. Hal ran towards Bruce's body with red eyes. His exoskeleton boots stepped on the dry mud, splashing the mud. Unexpectedly, 4 beams of heat vision and scorching air cut across him. Hal squatted down suddenly, leaned back, did a bridge, then threw himself to the ground and rolled. The exoskeleton connected his nerves, giving him nerve reflexes beyond ordinary people. The heat vision followed Hal rolling on the ground, burning the ground into 4 cross-cutting burn marks, and the smell of burning was emitted. Hal threw the radiation beam grenade high up and exploded in the air, shaped like a small sun, piercing red and green spectrum rays. This is a hybrid bomb that simulates green kryptonite radiation and red sun spectrum. The 2 Kryptonian gene warriors who attacked Hal knelt on the muddy ground and gasped deeply because of the green kryptonite radiation and the weak red sunlight. As a result, several Kryptonian warriors who were fighting against the Sea Lord Orm were caught off guard and suddenly lost their fighting power. Orm turned over and fired several water jets and shot them away. Hal did not run towards Bruce's body, but retreated. With a heavy heart, he threw down the smoke bomb and turned around to leave the battlefield. 2 more warriors who were not Kryptonian genes chased him. Hal had to run as hard as he could and could no longer care about Bruce's body. He could only feel heavy anger and helplessness in his heart. Damn it. It was you, the dead bat, who told me not to even want a body. Damn it. Hal gritted his teeth and roared angrily, and quickly rolled to avoid 2 attacks, and ran away without looking back. Memories. Memories before departure. In the hiding basement, the dim light illuminated half of Hal and Bruce's faces. Both of them had serious and heavy expressions, and their breathing was slightly controlled. Bruce looked calmly and said in a deep voice, "Hal, I have asked Barry to divert Bamulodi's attention. If Barry succeeds, then the world will return to normal. What if it fails?" Hal leaned against the wall, the dim light shining down. His face was indescribably heavy, and he said again, "It's too dangerous. You will die. Listen, Hal, we know nothing about Bamulodi. I need to understand him and all his power distribution settings. You just need to act angry, crying and sad. Krypton's consciousness transfer device allows me to invade, suppress anyone's brain consciousness, and seize control of the body. I will cooperate inside and outside to wipe out the Bamulodi group in one fell swoop. You have to get your Green Lantern power and unite with the Green Lantern Corps. I have also thought of a way to notify Aquaman and Wonder Woman. You just need to follow my plan. By then, we will get their help to unite with Amazon and Atlantis to deal with Bamulodi. Even if Bamulodi has developed on Earth for 10 years, he will not be able to withstand the attack from 3 parties, an attack from the inside out." Hal looked at Bruce deeply and said, "It's too dangerous. You will die. The Green Lantern Corps, Atlantis, and the Amazon of Paradise Island are enough to completely destroy Bamulodi head on. You don't need to go so deep into the enemy camp. Not enough. If any of them goes wrong, all our efforts will be in vain. I have an experimental base in Nevada, where I use my cells to cultivate an unconscious body. I can return to normal at any time." Hal was stunned for a moment. "We have been chased like dogs in the past few years, and you can still make a bad cave?" Bruce looked at Hal with a serious look. "Alfred maintains it for me. Then I can only collect your body for you." Hal said jokingly, "No, with your IQ and emotions, you will get yourself involved. When you see me die, just run away." Bruce said in a deep voice. Hal's face twitched. Bruce, based on what you said, when I see you die, I will run faster than a rabbit. Suddenly, the struggling expression on Mike's face returned to normal, his eyes suddenly opened, his eyelids tightened, he felt a contact lens in his right eye, projecting all kinds of information chaotically, but in an instant, he adapted to this convenient projection information exchange library. So, this is the configuration of the core personnel of Bamulodi. Mike's eyes swept across the battlefield. Hal really ran faster than a rabbit, chasing away from the battlefield with 2 soldiers behind him. Stop, come back. Mike stopped the 2 soldiers chasing Hal, called them back, and let Hal run far away. Ignore irrelevant people, deal with Orm. On the other side, nearly 10 people, 2 special teams, were besieging the Sea Lord Orm. Originally, the battle situation was good, and Ocean Lord Orm would be killed in a short time. However, Hal's sudden radiation bomb weakened 4 of the Kryptonian gene warriors, and they were unable to use freezing breath to restrict Ocean Lord from the outside, causing Ocean Lord Orm to turn over and use magic to gather water to drive away the besiegers. In an instant, Ocean Lord Orm gathered a wave of more than 10 meters high and rushed towards them, breaking up the formation. The use of magic effects caused the warriors with Kryptonian genes to be seriously injured. Ocean Lord Orm had a ferocious face, holding up the magic pendant, stepping on the surging waves condensed by magic, looking down and roaring, "Scum, surface people. You actually attacked the royal family of Atlantis." Chapter 221 Mike, the situation is not optimistic. Several teammates may die. A young man with icy hands and a chilly aura stared at the battlefield with his eyes fixed on it. He was panting, his strong chest was rising and falling, and his forehead was dripping with sweat or ice. The original support was based on the plan of the Flash, to capture the Flash at the scene. With their own nice ability, several other Kryptonian gene warriors used their frozen breath, a weightless person, and a gravity-enhanced ability person, to stop the Flash together. But unexpectedly, the Flash was not at the scene at all. Even so, they could control the scene, limit the strength of the Ocean Lord Orm, and kill the Ocean Lord Orm without hurting anyone. But just now, an earthquake from nowhere caused their originally good situation to plummet, and Hal's radiation beam grenade directly weakened all the Kryptonian gene warriors, and suffered heavy damage. The remaining combat power was already at a disadvantage in the face of the huge wave magic that the Ocean Lord Orm had gathered. Mike's eyes turned slightly, and he glanced at Leonard Snart, who was panting beside him. The cold air was slightly cold, and passed from his side to his skin, making his skin cold. This man, who was supposed to be the enemy of the Flash, the leader of the Rogues, Captain Cold, was one of the many villains who sincerely surrendered to Badi, because Badi cured his sister, and saved him, and his sister from the suffering. "Mike, I can't hold on for long. Every drop of his seawater is like 1,000 pounds, and it is difficult to freeze," Captain Cold said, and suddenly narrowed his eyes. He pressed his hands, that exuded cold air, towards the ground, and quickly spread out an ice wall to resist the water impact of the seal or dome, delaying a short time, so that a teammate could escape the range of the water impact. The water impact magic of the seal or dome was not like water at all. Instead, it had the penetrating power of a bullet. With the effect of magic, within a few seconds of escaping, the 2 muscle-enhancing warriors were shot through, and blood spurted out like a column. This is not the end. As the blood flows, the Ocean Lord wields the magic pendant and even uses blood to attack everyone. In an instant, facing this guy who can rival the Sea King, Orm, who has quickly condensed a huge wave and tide, has turned the situation around, and has broken up their original plan. The entire scene is completely at a disadvantage. First, rescue the Kryptonian gene warriors, let them stay away from here, and join the battle. After recovering their strength, retreat temporarily. Mike's eyes flickered, looking at the blue sea water that had condensed rolling waves, and raised to 10 meters. In the sun, it reflected a shaking flash. Almost in an instant, Mike knew that Ocean Lord Orm could not die. It could not trigger a battle between Atlantis and humans, and could not trigger their hatred. What the Sea King wants to do is to lead the sea people and the land humans to coexist peacefully. At this time, the Ocean Lord Orm must not be killed, otherwise, the 2 sides may fight each other, leading to serious consequences. Everything Arthur did will be in vain. Mike thought secretly in his heart. Captain Han Bing was slightly startled, and he couldn't help but glance at Mike. He remembered that His Majesty's instructions were to kill Ocean Lord Orm. Even though they are at a disadvantage now, they are not without fighting power. Originally, this dry environment was to limit Ocean Lord Orm's ability to increase the water flow. Now that Ocean Lord Orm has used magic to condense such a huge amount of water, as long as they can hold on and withstand the next attack, they are absolutely capable of killing Ocean Lord Orm. If they retreat now, it will be a bit intriguing. However, Captain Han Bing only had a subtle flash of thought in his mind, and he had no objection. Mike was the commander of this operation, and he would not disobey orders. In the Bamulodi group, the military style is strict. Opinions are allowed, but orders are not allowed to be refused. Everything is decided by Mike. Don't hold on. This place is 300 kilometers away from the sea. The hills are dry and the nearest city is more than 120 kilometers away. He can't run away from such a long distance. Besides, our recovery speed is faster than his magic recovery speed. Seeing Captain Ice stunned for a moment, Mike knew that the retreat just now was too sudden. He added a few more appropriate words to dispel Captain Ice's doubts. Captain Ice suddenly realized that indeed, with the recovery speed of Kryptonian gene warriors, after leaving this battlefield, it would take only a few moments of sun exposure to restore strength. Then, they would use thermal vision and freezing breath to consume and assist from a distance. In addition, everyone surrounded and consumed the battle. The Sea Lord Orm was just a trapped beast fighting, and there was no need to waste human lives to pile up, which was enough to kill him. Immediately, Captain Ice gave a secret signal through the communication, tactically covering the retreat. Orm, standing more than 10 meters above the surging waves, had sinister eyes and a cruel smile. He saw two people withdraw from the battlefield and wanted to save their teammates. Want to run? He held up the magic pendant, which glowed with a faint blue magic color in the sunlight. The waves flowing under his feet surged rapidly, splitting to both sides, and surged rapidly. The currents surrounded everyone high, surrounding them. The azure currents, like a giant snake, raised their heads high. Under the sunlight, they glowed with a faint blue light. The beautiful ocean was deadly. The people inside had no worries at all. In this situation, even if the seawater poured down with a force of 10,000 pounds, it would not be enough to kill them. It was just that they could not avoid being out of strength. People on the surface, do you want to go to war with Atlantis? It just so happens that I hate you dirty bugs too. Om stood on the top of the waves, his white black cloak fluttering. He held the magic pendant in his hand, looking down, with a deep sneer on his lips. Captain Han Bing was making a secret signal, and had arranged several people with different abilities to cooperate, rescue the injured Kryptonian gene warriors, and prepare to break out, and delay time according to Mike's orders. Bang! Suddenly, a huge sonic boom sounded in the sky, like a supersonic fighter, bursting out a huge noise in a dive, echoing throughout the space. In fact, this sound came very slowly. When this sound was heard, a white figure had already swooped down, stepped on the back of the Sea Lord Orm, and stepped him directly to the ground, sinking deeply into the ground. The extremely powerful impact force had already crushed Orm's internal organs in an instant. The sudden impact on his back caught him off guard. He had no time to resist, and was stepped on by Badi, crushing his internal organs, and stepping on the ground, stepping out a deep pit on the ground. The moment the waves crashed, they lost their magic power, and like a dead snake, they raised their heads and lay down, and the snow-white sea water splashed down. When the sound came over, the waves crashed and fell, and they found that Badi, a white figure, appeared in front of them, stepping on Om, who was no longer responsive and staring. Badi looked around slightly. In his hand, he was still holding the Flash. His legs were frozen and broken to the roots. The Flash was in a coma. Mike's breathing suddenly tightened, and he suddenly clenched his fists, lowered his head, and knelt down with everyone else. Your Majesty. Everyone knelt down in a hurry. Badi nodded and looked at the ground. Batman's dark figure entered his eyes. Batman died. Doubts flashed through Badi's mind. He could feel that Batman had no signs of life, no heartbeat, breathing, or brain waves. Such a fragile life. How could he hide from his men for several years? A trace of doubt flashed in his heart, and it was difficult to extinguish. In fact, he had only seen Batman once, when Batman's parents died. The rest of the time, he learned from the images taken by his men and the images monitored by satellites. He was doubtful about Batman's death. But on the road to conquest, he would not be surprised if anyone, even himself, died accidentally at any time, because life has always been so fragile. His eyes left Batman's body, and his eyes flickered as he scanned the surrounding environment. The doubts in his heart did not disappear, but were hidden in his heart. His eyes swept over Captain Ice and the rest of the team members one after another, and stopped on Mike, saying, "According to the plan." "Yes." Mike lowered his head and replied. Chapter 222 Alliance. Secret room. A brightly lit room. Incandescent lamps illuminated the room, and the round table in the room was reflected on the surface of the room, and the whole room was bright. Here sat the secrets and superpowers of various countries. From Asia, the Shenmei Bureau, the representative of the 10 Heroes Iron Face General, the Red Star of Russia, Ratseja of Egypt, Kimiyo of Japan, Dr. Star, Saudi Arabia, the mischievous Chief Al, the Asterisk Captain of Germany, Impala of South America, Prince Osiris of Kandak, Amanda Waller of the American Sky Society, Zetara, the representative of the British Magician Union, and so on. A total of 15 countries with strange powers, all of which have noticed the changes in the strange powers of the whole world and formed them, either to defend their own country's strange power armed forces, or to invade other countries' special armed forces. At this large round table, a short, slightly fat black woman, a woman with a cold look between her eyebrows, Amanda Waller stood up and spoke. "Please take out any cell phones and electronic devices. Every sophisticated electronic device and electromagnetic wave may be monitored, which may lead to the leakage of our conversation and discussion. Bamulodi monitors everything. Representatives of various countries' superpowers have come here to discuss in secret. I believe everyone knows the urgency and uncontrollability of the situation." Amanda looked around at everyone and said neatly, "We all understand what you mean, but why is there an orangutan wearing a detective costume sitting here?" Saudi Arabia's Sheikh Al, with a funny face like a naughty boy, cast his eyes to a corner of the round table. There was an orangutan sitting there peacefully, dressed like Sherlock Holmes, smoking a pipe, and occasionally taking the pipe off his hand, and exhaling a puff of smoke. His black gemstone-like eyes looked at everyone calmly. Next to the orangutan, there was Deathstroke, who was blind in one eye, with his lumbar spine straight, sitting firmly in his seat with a fierce momentum. It is the representative of Africa and Gorilla City. It has been the main force against the African branch of Bamulodi for a long time, but it is unknown to the world. It was introduced to this conference alliance by the ruler of the mercenary kingdom, Deathbell. Amanda Waller explained. Several people felt a little absurd. They actually sat together with a gorilla and formed an alliance? Question mark? Human, I'm smarter than the smartest of you. The detective-looking gorilla blew a smoke ring, and his black gemstone-like eyes swept across everyone with abnormal expressions, and spoke. "Put away your suspicions. I have established the underground world in Africa, the mercenary kingdom, and cooperated with Gerudo of Gorilla City to fight against the largest branch of Bamulodi for several years. It is more trustworthy than you. Here, there may be people controlled by Bamulodi. What qualifications do you have to face Bamulodi?" Deathbell's single eye swept across everyone sharply, and his tall and upright body was as steady as a mountain, and he said coldly, "There is no need for unnecessary suspicion. Everyone here has been through the most rigorous scrutiny by the Sky Eye, to make sure that there is not a trace of them being controlled by Bamulodi. That's why they appear here. We need cooperation, everyone." In the past few days, it has been confirmed that it was Bamulodi who sank the island of New Guinea, Indonesia, Australia, the New Hebrides, the Solomon Islands, the Philippines, the Hawaiian Islands, etc. All nearby Pacific coastlines were submerged by huge tsunamis, and more than 60 million people were killed and injured. Afterwards, the 10 countries controlled by Bamulodi came to rescue. I believe it is enough for anyone to see his military strength, but that's not all. The Sky Eye received a tip that the representative of Atlantis who came for peace talks had been killed by him, and he will use this to drag the whole world into the vortex of war. Amanda Waller said with her hands on the table, her face grim. This is not easy to deal with. The whole world is grateful to the Bamulodi group for its rescue measures. Who would have thought that it was him who caused all this? Atlantis saved many humans who fell into the ocean at the first time. It's not good for them to know that the royal family who came to negotiate was killed by humans. So, Bamulodi can't wait to start a war. How should we stop him? Unite, ally. Unite, ally. Please, first remove his hidden nails in your own country. Almost every country here is controlled by his nails. He can overthrow the regime of every country at will. Instead of stopping him, save your own country first. Different voices kept coming out at the round table. So, we need to unite and form a whole to fight him. Amanda Waller knocked on the table with her knuckles and said in a sonorous voice. There was silence at the round table for a while. Only the light was reflecting the floodlight on the table. I agree. The iron-faced general of the East nodded with a rusty metal head, saying, this is no longer the time for each country to fight alone. Going alone will only accelerate the destruction of Bamulodi. His footsteps have been rapidly moving towards world domination, and everyone can see it. We need to unite as one. Agree. Saudi Arabia's chief Al, with a stern look on his wrinkled and funny face, said, this is not a competition between countries. Since the establishment of the Bamulodi country near Saudi Arabia, our country has lost a large area of land and oil. He is gradually eroding my country. I have no reason to object. Agree. There was almost no objection, except for Zatara, the representative of the British Magician Union, who crossed his hands in silence and thought. He had fought against the three palaces with Badi and had a great friendship, but later, after he lent the magic circle base island to Lady Shangdu, this friendship faded away. It was not until now, 10 years later, that he regretted it. If he had killed him when he was weak, that would have been good. I agree. Zatara said, his face silent. With everyone's agreement, this global superpower alliance was established. At the same time, a problem arose. Who is the commander? He is not a human, but an alien, a remnant of Krypton. This news is equivalent to the information that Bruce secretly sent to you at the beginning. You already know it, so you have created many superpower organizations to secretly fight against him. All your organizations have my information and know how long I have been fighting against him and how long I have been preparing. I have been fighting against him for 10 years. I study his behavior, movements, and psychology every day. Every photo of him is deeply engraved in my mind. Every finger movement is listed in tens of thousands of words. I know him very well and understand everything about him. I have been preparing for so long and want to kill him. Command. Only I can take it. Deathstroke's single eye is sharp and his steady body sits on the seat, emitting a sonorous and resolute voice. Amanda Waller's face changed, and her dark face did not change. Her eyes flashed with an unknown light. There was another moment of silence in the round table room. I agree. Following the agreement of the guerrilla detective, organizations from various countries expressed their agreement one after another. Chapter 223 King of the Sea. In the Pacific Ocean, only the vast landmass of Australia can withstand the continuous impact of that tsunami of more than 700 meters. Many islands in the Pacific Ocean were submerged in the first wave. Countless islands were submerged. Indonesia was half submerged, and the Solomon Islands were all submerged because they were too close. The Roman Islands were all submerged. Kiribati was submerged. Tuvalu, New Hebrides, New Caledonia, Meru, Tokelau, Christmas Island, Niue, Tahiti, and even the Hawaiian Islands. The impact of that tsunami ruthlessly submerged all nearby islands. The sinking of New Guinea, the second largest island in the world, led to a chain of nearby destruction, and the whole world was deeply trapped in disaster and grief. Helicopters and transport planes are transporting manpower and material resources every day to support and save all mankind. News broadcasts report the disaster every day. Every day, people of different races around the world donate money to save those who survived that tsunami. This is an unprecedented disaster, a disaster more devastating than the World War, which is palpitating. More than 100 million people have been displaced, and in the future, more than 10 million people will die, which is shocking. At the same time, the Atlantis king who discovered the abnormality in the ocean at the first time also tried his best to prevent the generation of larger tsunamis. The Fiji Islands are one of the few islands in the Atlantic Ocean that can remain intact. The Sea King led the Atlantis army and settled here to save mankind. The islands are full of rescued humans, which have exceeded 7 million people. In addition to the islands that already have nearly 800,000 people, there are more than 8 million people in the scattered islands. This is the disaster that has passed 4 days. The sea surface has calmed down, and the super tsunami has been controlled and calmed by the Sea King who has been running around for days. The Fiji Islands are also the first islands that were landed by the Sea King and protected by magic, so that the rescued humans nearby can have a land environment to live in. The temporary huge black coral is unique on the island, and the temporary palace station generated by underwater technology is used. Inside, the coral lamps emitted a dim light, reflecting a strong body, wearing a golden fish scale tights, golden hair, and clear blue eyes, as bright as the sea. Beside him was the legendary symbol of the King of the Sea, the Trident of the Sea King. The Sea King frowned, and his resolute outline shadow was reflected under the coral light. In fact, in order to show that he and humans coexist peacefully on Earth, he dispatched the army of Atlantis to rescue civilians. This approach undoubtedly made it easier for humans to accept Atlantis. His choice was not wrong, but the sudden dilemma of resettling the 7 million people and the food they needed was embarrassing. If it was not handled well, it would easily disgust humans and easily lead to infamy. Humans are very fickle creatures. They are undoubtedly grateful for saving them from danger, but if they are allowed to live in hunger and grief for a long time, they will easily forget the actions of the savior, which will lead to them cursing, resenting the savior, and even hating them. Why didn't they stop that tsunami earlier? This is all the subtle psychology of human beings. If you don't pay attention, everything the Sea King does will turn into ashes. How long will it take for the food from the Bamilodi group to be sent over? The Sea King frowned and asked. The 7 million refugees who came one after another have directly impacted the entire Fiji Islands. There is no way to supply so many refugees with food. In Atlantis in front of him, the leader of the War General Corps, Muke, who was dressed in armor, with scales glowing darkly, and a square face, bent down and reported, "It will take at least 1 day. There are too many refugees around the Pacific Ocean now. They need to transport some of them to the refugees in Australia." The Sea King pondered, and then said, "Transfer some food from Atlantis, and let our soldiers catch some fish in the ocean, to serve as food temporarily." Muke was stunned. This is too much for humans. Originally, they had a large number of radicals who had no good feelings towards humans. In addition, Aquaman went out to rescue humans without authorization. Now, Atlantis's food and soldiers had to catch fish to keep humans hungry. Atlantis seemed to be a nanny for humans. Muck lowered his head and raised his head slightly. In the dim light of the coral, he looked at Aquaman's resolute and unyielding outline. Just when he wanted to persuade Aquaman not to be too concerned about humans and let the people of Atlantis feel cold, a huge voice sounded outside. "Catch him, human. Stop your behavior. Damn surface people. Kill him." Aquaman raised his eyebrows, and his blue eyes like the sea flashed with strangeness. He held the Aquaman trident in his hand, and stepped out of the door. Suddenly, at the door, he saw a man wearing a black sensor suit with mechanical wrappings on many joints. He was constantly attacking and running. Under the siege of many personal guards, he was trapped step by step. "Stop!" Aquaman shouted, stopping the personal guards' encirclement. He could see that there were many times when the men who were surrounded could hurt the personal guards, but they did not take any action and just dodged blindly. The newcomers obviously did not want to hurt him. "Finally I see you, Arthur. I need your help." Hal panted and breathed a sigh of relief. It was not easy to break through and enter the entire Aquaman station area. The personal guards alone had surrounded him, as if they wanted to eat him alive. Aquaman's blue eyes flashed with surprise. In fact, not many people knew his name. Generally, they called him Aquaman. The only friend who could naturally call him Arthur was his wife. "What do you want from me? If it's food, you need to wait a while." A batch of food will be allocated from Atlantis tomorrow. You won't be hungry. Believe in Atlantis's good intentions. Aquaman said. At this time, he was not willing to break the connection between humans and Atlantis. No matter what, this connection must be maintained. Thank you for your kindness to humans, but there are more serious matters that require your and Diana's help. We need to talk. Hal sighed and looked at Aquaman with heavy eyes. He knew what Arthur was going to do, and he also understood Arthur's concern for the connection between Atlantis and the humans on land, building peace together, and eliminating Atlantis' hostility and prejudice against humans. Arthur has been working hard for the future peace of Atlantis. But now, I'm afraid it won't have any effect. Aquaman's face sank slightly, and he turned and walked into the temporary station. Come in, let's talk. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Paradise Island. Early in the morning, the sun slanted down from Paradise Island, and the morning dewdrops dripped on the tips of the green grass leaves, emitting a crystal clear brilliance. Behind Paradise Island, there were dense forests everywhere, and tall jungle trees were constantly undulating. There were even plants from the ancient Jurassic period, which built up this huge and ever-living green forest ocean. Diana took a deep breath of the morning air, and the air was filled with the fresh fragrance of the soil, the coolness of the morning, and the comfortable feeling of the cold skin. She was wearing straw sandals, stepping on the wet grass ground, with animal skins around her hips, her chest bulging, and only her animal skin bra around her. Her black hair was curled, and her shawl was spread out, showing her wild and lively agile posture, running fast on the jungle peaks. She held a Greek spear in her hand, and her movements were like a cheetah. The black shadow moved flexibly in the green jungle, shaking the water droplets on the tree trunks and falling. The morning sun shone on her healthy wheat-colored skin. The beauty bestowed upon her by the gods made the world pale in comparison. Her straight eyebrows reflected her strong will. Her beautiful face was filled with excitement. Her eyes were calm and confident. She had a charming smile on her lips and climbed up a mountain with great interest. It was a flat-topped mountain with a cut top for practicing combat skills. The sharp wind from the mountain peak blew like a knife, blowing her hair, making it fly. She used her slender fingers to lift the black hair that blocked her eyes behind her ears. Her beautiful dark eyes looked into the distance. From here, she could see the palace buildings of the Amazon tribe not far away. The white was continuous and connected to the green forest ocean behind. Amazon's Greek architecture is often known for its large span. Whether it is an arch structure, an arch frame structure, a truss structure, a beam column system, a fountain structure, a lintel structure, a vault structure, a cross vault structure, or a multi-dome structure, they are all extremely grand. The column buildings are thick, but they are carved with fine carvings. Therefore, from Diana's point of view, it is an extremely grand and spectacular scene. Diana looked at the Amazon's gradually rising vitality in the sun. I guess at this time, my mother found that she was gone early in the morning, and she must have eaten breakfast with a dark face, and sent someone to find her. She smiled slightly, and her sight extended forward with the Amazon building complex. In the distance was the blue sea and the blue sky connected, and the ocean with ripples and waves. Diana's eyes were full of yearning curiosity. There is the outside world, the human world. After watching for a while, Diana held a Greek spear and began to practice spearmanship early in the morning. Her agile and beautiful figure exuded a dazzling brilliance under the sun, and her black hair fluttered, swinging her calm confidence and beautiful face. About an hour later, another Amazon tribesman jumped in the jungle, climbed flexibly, and jumped onto the Pingding mountain. Diana's ears moved slightly, and she heard the voice of the newcomer. She turned around and pointed her gun at the newcomer, with her eyebrows straight, and smiled. You came just in time, Artemis, let's have a fight. The newcomer had golden hair, tied up high behind her head, and her face had the spirit of a woman who was as brave as a man. She was a slender and heroic female warrior. Artemis and Diana were the two most aggressive Amazon warriors, and they often fought each other. At the same time, Artemis was also one of the Amazon army commanders and instructors. Diana, you know, I really want to beat your beautiful face, but now is not the time. A man was caught in the palace, and the queen asked you to go back immediately. This man is related to you. Artemis spread her hands and said helplessly, the golden hair behind her head fluttered in the sun, sparkling. Diana couldn't help but put down the Greek spear, and doubt flashed on her beautiful face. Is it related to her? She knew that, since the Amazon announced its appearance in this world, many humans have been trying to investigate and enter the Amazon. But they just circled around the periphery and were deceived by the magic array to go out. Some even died directly in the magic array. No human from the outside world can really enter the Amazon, let alone in the palace. Is it related to me? Why? I don't know any man. Diana's face showed doubt. Her handsome eyebrows were tightly knitted. She held the spear in her right hand and went down the mountain with Artemis. After walking through a steep mountain road, the two accelerated and jumped among the trunks of the forest, shaking the leaves of the forest with a rustling sound. It seems that it's because of the outside world. Someone wants to rule the world. He is a rebel. He found the secret passage from your room to the forest and entered the palace. Artemis also seemed confused. Amazon was so easily invaded by a human. Huh. Diana's eyes widened. How could the secret passage to her room's bathroom be discovered so easily? Amazon, the palace hall. Hippolyta, wearing a luxurious golden robe, sat on the throne of Amazon. Her dignified and exquisite beauty had even tempted Zeus. At this moment, she looked at Victor, who was being pressed to his knees by the Amazons on both sides on the ground of the hall with a bright wall. In the future, are you and Diana comrades in arms? Hippolyta stared at Victor, trying to find a trace of lies in the man's expression. Victor had signs of being beaten. The moment he was discovered, he was beaten and almost killed. Paradise Island is a country of daughters. Not to mention that he was in the secret passage leading to Diana's room and bathroom from the underground passage. Fortunately, no one was there at the time, otherwise, stabbing him to death would have been a light punishment. Yes, we need Diana's help. We need the help of Amazon. In the future, Diana and we will be the founders of the Justice League, and we will protect the Earth together. Victor said with a firm look in his eyes. Hippolyta's breathing slowed down slightly. She sat on the throne, leaning back slightly, looking down at Victor, and remained silent. Some Amazon warriors asked to deal with this man. This man's unscrupulous entry into the palace was an insult to them. But Hippolyta refused. Two rapid footsteps sounded outside the hall. Diana and Artemis ran all the way, and ran into the hall from outside, with their chests heaving slightly. Artemis knelt on one knee, saluted, and stood aside. Mother. Diana's chest and abdomen rose and fell slightly. She asked her mother if she was well, and then turned her eyes to Victor's face. On his beautiful face, his eyebrows were tightly furrowed, flashing with doubt. Chapter 225 Preparation for Rescue. It's Bruce. Emperor Building. Underground Research Institute. On the 14th underground floor. This floor is full of physical clones, testing research floors, and the main focus is on the research of doomsday cells and multiple cells by humans. It is brightly lit here, empty and vast, with biological doctors and researchers wearing white coats coming and going. It has the most advanced biological research equipment in the world, and gathers the world's most outstanding biomedical experts. Every moment, it bursts with the unique wisdom of mankind. The white ground is sound-absorbing mud and glue. Badi's footsteps step on it and sink in gently without making a sound, and it will not hinder the work of any researcher. There will only be some researchers who happen to see Badi, who will slightly nod and bow to show respect. Passing through the white corridor, the quiet and silent corridor, Badi walked to the innermost part and entered the Doomsday Manufacturing Research and Cultivation Room. Tall glass-sealed jars are like movies, standing here, and the ground is covered with cold fog, making this place look more movie-like and sci-fi. Increase the nutrient. Solar energy injection. Antibody proliferation. Muscle strength tearing. Protein can't keep up. Freeze it. Luther said calmly. Then, the assistant nearby followed his instructions, turned on the low-temperature air conditioner, and froze the tumor in the glass-sealed jar. An assistant began to collect and record data to analyze the problems. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner, but there was no result for the time being. This was another failed experiment. Badi was not surprised at all. This place was composed of human biological science researchers. 10 floors below, there was also a special team composed of Hera, an artificial intelligence, who use the collective wisdom of the human science here, combined with artificial intelligence and Badi's understanding of Krypton cells to conduct research, but still did not get a good result. Doomsday is not so easy to research. Maybe it really needs to wait for Zod's arrival. Badi looked at the tumor and thought to himself. Luther and the researchers saw what Badi was doing, bowed their heads to greet him, and after Badi nodded slightly, they continued to work. "Is it done?" Badi asked. In the days after capturing the Flash, he began to plan to use the Flash to save the past. This was not just a simple need to save Jenny. It also required not to affect his mood at that time, and not to let his current self see his future self, which would cause changes. Badi never underestimated the power of time. It's done. The embryo is absorbing nuclear energy and growing. It is expected to grow to a height of 13 meters. It is bloated, with bone barbs and cuticle layers. It will be adjusted to 95% of the image completion. Luther nodded and answered, leading Badi to the tallest glass-sealed tank, which was more than 20 meters high and 15 meters in diameter. In the glass-sealed tank, a huge and ugly embryo was floating in the green nutrient solution, holding its calf and sleeping. Badi's figure froze in front of the embryo, and his eyes could not help but change to tenderness, revealing a look of reminiscence. The ugly figure with swaying firelight and towering in the darkness appeared in front of him again. Anyone who loves you is worth cherishing, and is worth traveling through time to change all the regrettable endings. After a long time, he recovered. The 9th floor of the Underground Research Institute, from the 1st floor to the 9th floor, is a mechanical floor. The entire 9 consecutive floors have a slight smell of motor oil. Countless individual weapons, nanotechnology, and other research are carried out here. These 9 floors are connected to the large circular accelerator collider on the ground, and also connected to the underground ocean of the Atlantic Ocean, where the Kryptonian spacecraft is located. However, the Kryptonian spacecraft has now completely changed its appearance and turned into a giant amphibious aircraft carrier that can even fly into space and become an aircraft carrier that can carry hundreds of thousands of people. On the 9th floor, Mike's eyes slightly swept over all the high-tech instruments here. Following the order, he watched over the researchers and installed a mechanical prosthesis on Barry's leg. This prosthesis has the ability to absorb the storage of the speed force and limit the frequency modulation of the speed force. Mike was ordered to guard here to avoid any accidents. Seeing Barry being controlled by the researchers like a puppet, manipulating the nerve connection of his legs, Mike couldn't help but get angry. His face was tense, and his fingers were stiff and white. He wanted to clench his fists and beat them to death to save Barry, but he couldn't. The defense here was too tight. If he wasn't in his current state, he couldn't get in at all. When the staff who installed the mechanical prosthesis were relieved that a mechanical prosthesis had been installed, a yellow arc flashed on the Flash's arm, and a sizzling sound was heard. Mike suddenly stepped forward and put his hand on the Flash's arm. "Hey, this is not appropriate. The combatants are only responsible for security and cannot touch the research. What are you doing?" The commander in charge of the research stopped Mike. "I was sent by His Majesty to prevent the Flash from going berserk. The Flash is under strict control by His Majesty. No one can escape His Majesty's wrath if he rebels. The Flash's strength is about to recover. Even 10 times the anesthetic can't control him." Mike shouted at the commander in a cold voice. The commander paused for a moment and saw the electric arc appearing on the Flash's body. He then hurriedly ordered the personnel to bring in stronger anesthetics to anesthetize the Flash. As Mike said, the electric arcs on the Flash's body began to increase. He had regained consciousness, but he was unable to escape from here. Mike held Barry's hand with his hand and pressed his thumb to form a secret code between them, forming a sentence. "Barry, what's going on?" Barry, who had just woken up from a coma, froze. Bruce asked them to memorize this code by rote. It was several times more complicated than the Morse code. The memorized words could be used to successfully learn Chinese, Arabic, German and other difficult languages in the world. It was a pain for them at first, but the benefits were also great. A nod was enough to make them understand. However, only Hal, himself, Bruce, and Victor knew it. No one else could know it. In an instant, Barry knew that this Mike was Bruce. In the position covered by Bruce, Barry's fingers gently touched Mike's clothes and pointed out the words, "Bamulodi wants me to help him go back to the past." Mike's eyes narrowed and his fingers pressed on Barry's arm tightly. At this time, a researcher had come with a stronger anesthesia and injected Barry. Taking advantage of the moment before Barry fell into a coma again, Mike pressed out a sentence. Barry nodded slightly and fell into a coma again. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.